Hi,
Jason,
how's it going?
good. How's Tennessee?
It's good. It's still a little chilly here for some reason. I don't know. It's getting cold at night, but during the day it's getting warm.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not warming up here. I don't know why. It's May already. Can you believe it? It's May.
I know, it's nuts. It's crazy.
Are you coming to Chino? Why aren't you coming to Chino?
I am not. What is I when is that, by the way?
It is May 18th through the 21st.
Okay, I will be out of the country again, so I'll
You're
be in
always out of the country.
always.
You're jet setting around the world.
Yep, that's me. It's going. It's either that or Pizza Hut. Yeah, it's kind of nice because I that was the reason I got one of the reasons I got the second job at Pizza Hut because there were just um my family had planned this for a family vacation to Scotland, so I didn't think I'd have the
Scotland.
money to go. Yeah, so we're gonna end up going there. Well, I'm tacking on
Scotland's
to the.
beautiful.
You've been?
I have not.
Oh, okay.
Nope. But I've seen pictures and it is beautiful.
Yeah, everybody I tell about this is like they're like Scotland, really? They're all excited for me, so it'll be good. The end of the I'm leaving I think the 16th to tack on to the end of my sister's ministry thing. They're going to Greece to help paint some buildings there, and then so I'm gonna get a few pictures. Just go to take some photos there. Then from there, hop over to Scotland. So, yeah, I'm excited about Greece.
Wow.
I've been once before, but I'm excited to go back. So it was
So
cool.
I went to Greece when I was in Israel. My parents came and visited, so we went for the weekend to Greece because it's so cheap. Like you can you can fly from Israel to Greece and for like I think our tickets were like $50 or something.
Oh, nice. Dang, that's cool.
It- yeah, it was something ridiculously cheap.
Where'd you
Um,
go in Greece?
Roads.
Okay, I haven't been there. We did the only place I've been is to we went to Plaka in Athens, something like that. It's the old city in Athens. But uh,
Elijah says Jason is secretly converting Orthodox. This is why he is
yeah,
really going to Greece.
yeah,
Um,
maybe.
which reminds me, if so, Jewish Book Club tomorrow. If you haven't voted for the which book you want us to do next, anybody who wants to vote should vote.
Is that the one I commented on? What video was that? The one I watched last. Who are you doing that with?
So Elijah's the one who's running it.
Okay.
He's Clown of Babylon, and he wears a silly clown hat when.
Oh, okay. Is this a new thing then? Or
So we've been doing Halachic Man, which I have around
that's
here
right.
somewhere. I think I probably
Okay.
put it back. And so we finished Halachic Man, and then we're trying to decide what's next. And so there's a runoff. Here, I will find what the runoff was on. So the five books that are uh, up for votes. Lonely Man of Faith by Rabbi Soloveitchik. That's kind of sort of a follow up book to Halachic Man. Um, the Laws of Repentance from the Mishnah Torah by Maimonides. The Sayings of the Fathers from the Mishnah itself by the sages. Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust, which was my suggestion, but like people don't seem to be very excited about that, by Yafa Eliash. I read that book already. I liked it, and so the discussion a lot of people had was they thought it would be like heavy and it's actually very inspiring, but whatever people want. And the fifth choice is The Great Partnership: God, Science, and the Search for Meaning by Rabbi Jonathan Sachs.
Huh.
So those are.
So what was your pick one more time? What was the one you were going?
If I were to pick the book we were going to do, I would probably do Hasidic Tales of the Holocaust. But I said that in the first round of voting, and it was like in the top. It was like tied with two other books for third/fifth. So like, not a lot of people voted for it. And then in the runoff, I don't think it's doing very well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would say maybe my vote might be for the sayings.
Sayings of the Fathers.
Yeah, I think that might be kind of cool. I don't know. Sounds
Yeah,
like it'd be neat.
it's the only ancient text there. So the sayings of the fathers is the so the first, I would argue, the first 5 chapters, maybe even 6. So it's there are 6 chapters of it. 5 chapters which were part of the Mishnah, and a sixth which later got added on in the liturgy. And the first 4 chapters quite likely consist of sayings that Jesus would have heard. The first 3 chapters, I would say, like almost definitely would be things that Jesus would be familiar with. So that I've always recommended, like, I think any Christian who wants to understand the Gospels should at least read through sayings of the fathers.
Yeah.
But it's not that popular. And as far as a book club, I don't know. Like, I don't know if it's a great choice for a book club. It's more the type of thing that, like, you want to sit there and like discuss. It's kind of like the Book of Proverbs, you know? Like, you
That's
can't
what I would think. Yeah.
read it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Have you
Yeah,
met
that's
my
true.
kitty?
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. How's she doing?
She's good.
How's the
Sometimes she
Valley of
comes
Death?
and sits on my lap quietly, but oftentimes that's when I'm being quiet. So when I speak, I'm not sure she really loves that. And when I have headphones, she tries to attack them often.
Oh my gosh. How
For
old is
some
she?
reason, she's like 7 months now, I guess.
Okay.
She's getting spayed in a few weeks.
Oh, fun. Hopefully, well, I guess as long as it's a she, it probably won't be as bad. I know the males can get upset and start peeing on stuff. I think.
Really? I didn't know that.
I think I've heard that. I don't know. But I've never really owned a cat. So here's something.
Well,
I can't
I didn't want to deal with heat, so I've heard kitties in
Yeah.
heat are problems.
Yeah, I wouldn't want that either. You don't want to deal with a bunch of kittens either.
Hello, Hezzy. Hello, Sandy.
Sandy. I was wondering where I meant to ask you last time if you had anything for Sandy because I hadn't seen her in a while.
So
Glad she's
Sandy
here.
works, and she's coming to Chino, and she participates in the book club.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Oh, have you also the other person? Gosh, what was your name? Tiffany, the one that was like making weapons.
Oh, right. Tiffany's not been around for a really long time.
Yeah, I didn't know what happened to her. She was coming through your Twitch channel, though, right? Wasn't that it? Is that how she found you?
Yeah, she was. She was on the Hello Fraud. She was on the Discord a little bit. I forget her name though. Do you remember what her name was on? Is
Not on Discord, no.
Intrepid
Uh,
Ducks. I think that's her.
oh,
I
okay.
am going to say, I am going to message her and say, people are asking where you went. We miss you.
Yeah, I miss her. She was fun.
Yep. Okay. The Baha'i lady. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We should pray.
All right.
It's all you.
All right. Heavenly Father, we come before you tonight. We just thank you for this time that we get to spend in communion with you. And we just ask that you open up our eyes and anoint our eyes, Father, to see what you have prepared for us. I ask that you give us humility to be directed by you and our church as well, Father. And we just ask you for wisdom, and we just thank you for all things. And in your name I pray. Amen.
So I was actually kind of interested because I was listening to when Father Stephen joined the Greek Bible study.
Yeah.
I was trying to listen to it over again, and so I mentioned Vihi ben Soa, and I thought we might take a look at that.
That was the numbers part, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah, I was reading through that in the thing you sent, but I gotta say I wasn't sure I understood all of it. The Safaria part, but
yeah, let me
verse 10.
pull that up. So this is the Sifri Bamidbar, which is a collection of midrashim, and it's talking about Bamidbar, I believe, is Numbers 10:35, and so there, and I pulled this. Let me.
I like this joke. Sorry, I gotta put it up here. She said Baha'i. That was good. We need more of that.
Okay, so I actually pulled up a scroll of the Torah, and this is verses 35 and 36 at the end of chapter 10 of Numbers. And you will see that there are two symbols. You see the symbols? So you see the breaks, the white spaces.
Yeah.
So there's a symbol before. So that's it's a upside down nun that is in the scroll before the beginning of these two verses and at the end of these two verses. So
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, and so we actually recite these verses when we open up the ark. The verse says, "V'yi ben soa ha'aron v'yomer Moshe kuma Hashem v'yafutzu oivecha v'yanusu mesanecha mipanecha." So, and it was that the ark traveled, and Moses would say, "Arise, O Lord, and your enemies will." Yafutsu. I want to say explode, but like disperse, and will flee or yeah. So it's using. I mean, there's a pun there, but like will seek refuge those who hate you from before you. Be dispersed, Chazi says, for Yafutsu. Uvnucho Yomar Shuva Hashem Revavot Alfei Israel. And when it rested, he would say, return or rest, O Lord, the tens, the myriads and thousands of Israel. So those are the two verses, 35 and 36. Do the Samaritans also have the inverted nuns? I doubt it very much. I don't actually know. And so that's what the Midrash is talking about here. And this is Bamidbar 84:1, paragraph from the Sifrei, which is thing. And it says, and it was when the ark traveled, so it's quoting Bamidbar 10:35. There are signs, inverted nuns, before this verse and after the verse. Rebbe says, because it is a book in itself, whence they ruled a Torah scroll which was erased, and there remained 85 letters as in this section, and it was when the ark traveled, imparts Tuma to the hands. So that's in Shabbat 14a. So this is actually the halacha, that the smallest, so these two lines by themselves are considered a complete book of the Bible.
Whoa.
Yeah, and they have the halachic status of being a book of the Bible. And that's why actually the 5 books of Moses are in fact 7, are in fact in halacha, they are 7 books, because Numbers is cut up into 3, Numbers until 1035, 35 and 36, and then Numbers 11 and continue. So yeah, and so I couldn't find where I had heard this, but the Talmud definitely says that this is not the natural place where this part of the Bible, like these 2 lines, should be in the Bible. That they were put there, and that the symbols are to signify that Latid Lavo, in the future, it's going to be rectified somehow. And I couldn't find, I tried looking very briefly to find it. But we have similar teachings also about the Kativ and the Kri. So when you read the Hebrew, there are plenty of places, almost on every single page, certainly in the rest of the Bible, but even in the 5 books of Moses, that there are what people would call spelling mistakes, which the Masoretes, so the Masoretic text, so Masorah means tradition. So the scribes would not fix even those things which seemed to be like obvious spelling mistakes. Like there's a lot of places where, so a Vav and a Yud look very similar. Let me pull up. So this is the Hebrew alphabet, and the letter on the top row all the way to the left is a Yud, and the 5th letter from the left is a Vav. So if you look in the Tetragrammaton, for example, you'll see that the Yud is the letter all the way to the right, and Vav is the 3rd letter from the right. Or here, Yod is shown as Chochma, and Vav is shown as Midot. You see how similar they are. It's just a matter of
Yeah.
extending the and I guess here you'll see the yud and the vav, right? It's just a matter of extending the line there, right?
Mhm.
So if somebody wanted to say, Chazi says there's a famous nun by Mishnah in the book of Judges claiming it's Moshe's descendant by Menashe. Oh, you mean an inverted nun? I'm not sure what you're saying, Chazi. Anyway, so there are plenty of places where people could easily say, "Oh, it's a spelling mistake. You could just change the vav to a yud or change the yud to a vav." But we've never done that. That's not how Jewish scribes
Yeah.
the Masoretic text. Even things that seem like a little bit like, okay, come on, like there are places where there are extra haze or extra silent letters or missing letters, and people are like, come on, just and we don't do that. We have a
Yeah.
tradition, what's called the Cree, how we read it, and we'll read it because like you can't. There are certain things you can't even read, right? You can't read it the way we keep the letters, the consonantal letters, but we don't change that. That's not what we do in our Bibles, right?
Yeah.
And what the Jews don't do that. That's for Germans. Yeah, and frankly, part of like so anybody who's studied anything about textual analysis, like Christian scribes throughout the history of Christian manuscripts have made all kinds of emendations trying to fix things, which is why you can see, like, with older texts, you can totally see like people tried to fix things and they messed up the fixing of things and made things worse, right? But Jewish scribes never did that. That was like considered not something we did. And so we have an understanding that even those spelling mistakes, there's some form of meaning there that we don't understand and eventually will be better understood, right? We'll understand why there are these seeming spelling mistakes or things like that. And the reason I point all of this stuff out is because I am trying to counter, and hopefully Chazi will. I know Chazi and Yosef pretty much agree with this, but there has been a propensity within Judaism in reaction to. Oh, there's a small floating nun on Menashe. Okay, so that's something else. Oh, have I told you about? I'll I'll tell you about Purim Fest 1947 after this. But if I haven't told you, have I told you about Purim Fest 1947?
I think so. I'll. You can tell it again. And I don't know. I
You'll
think you might
pretend you
have.
haven't heard it. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, but
Or,
I just want to be very, very clear for people who are Orthodox Jews that in response to some of the bad problems we've had with people who are trying to change the Torah and stuff, there has been a kind of reaction where people have become very literalist in their interpretations of the Torah and kind of taken a fundamentalist view of Jewish scripture, which I just want to make clear you can't make that work within Judaism. You can't make that type of looking at the Torah like as a propositional, um, Moses sat down and wrote every single letter exactly as God told him to, which was precisely the same way as it was before creation, which was precisely how Abraham, like, if you're taking that literalist of a view, then it makes no sense to say there are symbols telling us that this is not where these two lines actually belong, right? In the Torah, because it's like, well, what does that mean? That's not where these two lines in the Torah belong. Like, how does that jive with your literal interpretation of the exact text as Moses wrote it, right? It doesn't work. And I just wanted to end anything regarding the Kativ and the Kri, and I mean, I could give hundreds of examples from the Talmud and the Midrashim and halacha lema'aseh that it is not permissible. It is not. You're not being more Orthodox Jewish by being this type of fundamentalist, literalist person within Orthodox Judaism, although a lot of times when you're talking to children, I completely understand speaking to them and in literalist frameworks that they can understand, because if you do study like the development of children and their capacity to understand conceptual things, like a 9-year-old, an 8-year-old generally is not able to understand concepts that are that abstract anyway. So if you're trying to make an 8-year-old understand that when it says water in Genesis 1:2, it's not talking about literal water you could put in a cup, like, that 8-year-old is never going to understand that. It's not within his mental capacity to understand. Generally, like, that's not a conceptual framework that an 8-year-old can understand. At the same time, once you're like in your 30s and you're trying to understand the Torah, if you think that Genesis 1:2 refers to literal water, like that the Spirit of God was hovering over actual water, like, that is a conception of God that is completely heretical to Judaism. Like, the idea that God could hover over water, like, that is completely meaningless, and like, that is a conception of God that nullifies all of Jewish teachings.
I don't understand. What can you help me understand that? Why that is heretical?
Because
Like, why is it so?
God can't hover like over water. Like, that is a God that is like bound within time and space. That's like God.
Because you're like anthropomorphizing God or something? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah, you're turning God into something that can hover over water. Like, what does that even mean?
I guess I kind of see what you're saying. If you're suggesting that it's like, I mean, where I guess in images, most people would paint that as like a dove floating over the waters or something like that. So I could kind of see that where you're saying God isn't a dove, but then at the same time, I'm like, I guess where I struggle is I'm like, I don't know how else to describe a thing that you talk of waters. That's like one of the things I think you would point to as something infinite in a way. You can't.
Well,
I mean, you
yeah,
can't contain it. Well, you can contain it in a cup, but I mean, in
conceptually,
your hand or
right?
something.
There is something that the Torah is expressing to us about the Spirit of God hovering over the waters
Yeah.
before creation, before, like, in
Yeah.
this primordial concept, right? So there's spiritually something there that,
Yeah.
in fact, the Kabbalists talk about, like, um, so
Yeah. I
Merachepet,
guess.
right? That's the Arizal says Met Rapach. That's when 288 sparks of holiness from God Himself fell into the world, right? But yeah, God is not a super thing. God is not something in the world, and a
Yeah.
conception of God that that has God actually hovering over actual water, like, that's
Yeah.
that's heretical to Judaism found fundamentally. Just to answer Zacharias, the 3,500 years of religious history, and somehow the Baha'i are stunting on all the religions in Israel. That headquarters is mint. Almost converted years ago. My bullshit detector got triggered. Okay, so I have to say, a lot of my family converted to be Baha'i. After my grandmother, who was the oldest, got married, the entirety of her family, both her parents and all of her siblings, converted to Baha'ism. And so we have a lot of Baha'i family in my family. And yes, the Baha'i, in a sense, are like the Mormons of Islam. It's kind of funny, if you look into it. Uh, the Baha'i gardens in Haifa are absolutely beautiful. I mean, here, I should actually probably pull up Baha'i gardens in Haifa. So this is where's the picture from? Let me find the picture on okay. So you can see the Baha'i gardens. There's 7 terraces. You can
Oh,
see it from basically anywhere in the entire city.
where is this?
This is in Haifa.
Okay.
This is where Baha'u'llah, who is considered kind of like the prophet in Baha'ism, is buried. And this is the world headquarters of the religion. And so Baha'is are prohibited from living in Israel by their religion. So you have to get special permission to visit Israel. And if you want to become Baha'i and you're living in Israel, you actually have to move out of Israel in order to do so. And it's really interesting. There's a lot of things that's very interesting about the religion, but why did they convert? I don't think that Baha'i would be an easier in an Islamic country versus Jews. No, it actually is not. So in Iran, Baha'i people are not allowed. They don't have protections of the law. So if you murder a Baha'i person in Iran, legally, that's not illegal. Um, and they are not allowed to they're not allowed to attend any of the universities in Iran. And so one of my cousins actually helps run an online university for Baha'i people in Iran, so that they can go to school and get a university degree. But because being Baha'i is considered heretical to Islam by the government of Iran, so yeah, it's technically not even illegal to murder Baha'is in Iran.
Whoa,
Yeah,
that's crazy.
yeah, lots of. I mean, there are certain things that like people in the West take for granted that like we think well, why did they convert? Well, I mean, during the time of yeah, conviction. I mean, uh, many of my family are very religious members of the Baha'i faith. They really are. Um, and during the time of the Shah, it was something a lot of Jews converted to, but a lot of Christians did too. I mean, and a lot of Muslims did too. Baha'i was a popular religion, especially when um, Baha'u'llah was actually alive. It was actually pretty popular. It was afterwards. I mean, when you look at the subsequent history of it, um, yeah, like you have to take a look at it. Um, how committed
I'm
to the
trying to
Islamic
look up.
Revolution is the run-of-the-mill Persian? Um, Let me put it this way: if there is, and this is like going completely off the thing of Bible study, but like, um, if there is a revolution in Iran, I think the most likely reason will be will be a rejection of the military rule of the present religious hierarchy, which isn't really very religious at all. So you have to understand that the current Ayatollah Khamenei was not considered an Ayatollah, and he was recruited by the military leaders to take over after Khomeini died, and turned into an Ayatollah for their for their gratification. And there are no genuine Ayatollahs who are who agree with the theology that Iran's government is based upon. And so what's probably going to happen after Khamenei dies is they're going to try to install his son. And from what I've heard, his son is even more of a joke as a Ayatollah than he is. So most of the resistance towards the theocracy in Iran is actually coming from the actual Ayatollahs. Like the Ayatollahs who actually lead Shia Islam tend to not believe in this concept of Vilayat Faqih. And this must be like really boring to you, Jason.
No, I'm just not sure I understand it all. But it's not boring. Is that what I was looking at that comment too? Is that what Baha'i?
Yeah.
Is that what their belief is? Because I thought that was kind of a Hindu belief with the god Vishnu was kind of something like that. He would incarnate it.
Yeah, it's very new agey. Baha'i religion is very new agey. And it was really the perfect synchronistic liberal religion. Yeah, it's very perennialist. And it was so
Yeah, I was trying to look up the main principles of their faith, and it seems kind of vague, but I mean, none of it necessarily sounds bad. Outset, I can see where you could go wrong with things like that, but it does feel new agey, I guess. It's mostly
very
about
new agey.
oneness and things like that. Yeah.
There are a few things I could point out, like, for example, their Supreme Council. Women are not allowed on their Supreme Council, which, like, they won't give any. So this was just a revelation from their leaders that women cannot serve on the Supreme Council. And this is very, very like, it's, if like you're trying to poke a Baha'i in their axioms, that's like one of the ones where you're like, well, why can't women serve on the Supreme Council, huh?
So they're not too happy about that. So who made that decision then? If
So, okay, now I'm forgetting the so after Baha'u'llah, the next his Baha'u'llah. So the first leader was the Bab, and he kind of, so Baha'is believe that he was kind of like John the Baptist, and um, kind of inaugurated the Baha'u'llah, who established the Baha'i faith, and then his son Abdul Baha was served as the head from 1892 to 1921. And then after he died, so Shoghi Effendi became the next leader, and he was a grandson of Abdul Baha. So he became the next leader, and I believe he's the one. There was no successor to Shoghi Effendi as like the basic leader of the Baha'i faith, and he's the one who I believe established the Universal House of Justice, which is the leadership thing, and he's the one who said that women cannot serve. So to this day, women do not serve as on the Universal House of Justice, I guess is what it's called.
Never even heard of that, so I guess I probably can't really comment on. I don't know the Universal, what their duties are, or anything like that.
Well, okay, so here's what has to say. Wikipedia has to say. Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i faith, in his book Kitab-i-Iqdas, first ordains the institution of the House of Justice and defines its function. The institution's responsibilities are also expanded on and referred to in several other of Baha'u'llah's writings, including his Tablets of Baha'u'llah. In those writings, Baha'u'llah writes that the Universal House of Justice would assume authority over the religion and would consider matters that had not been covered by himself. He stated that the members of the institution would be assured of divine inspiration and have the regard of all peoples and safeguard their honor. Later, Abdul Baha, who was his successor, in his will and testament, elaborated in its functioning, its composition, and outlined the methods for its election. He wrote that the Universal House of Justice would be under Baha'u'llah's protection, that it would be freed of error, so I guess it's infallible, and that obedience to it would be obligatory. Abdul Baha first used the term Universal House of Justice to distinguish the supreme body from those local houses of justice to be established in each community and secondary houses of justice. He also stated that the institution's decisions would be by majority vote but that unanimous decisions were preferred and that it would be elected by the members of the secondary houses of justice. He also confirmed Baha'u'llah's statements that although women and men are spiritually equal, membership on the Universal House of Justice would be confined to men, and that the wisdom behind this decision would become apparent in the future. So, yeah.
I do remember this coming up vaguely once before. So I remember that last part, that the wisdom that'll be revealed in the future. You know, which I kind of like for some reason. It's very mysterious.
I mean,
Like-
I personally think it just makes a ton of sense. But so there are 9 members apparently.
Oh, okay. All right. Cool. So why do you think it makes a ton of sense?
Because there is a physiological difference between the brains of men and women. So I mean,
So what is it?
if you don't like
Yeah.
it, you don't like it. But there is an actual difference between. There's a neurological difference between men and women. It's not like we're just in different bodies. We are different. Men and women are different.
I remember you even saying that before and going into how that even changes for women when they have a child and things like that. But I guess the reason, because I'm like, what is the house? So the House of Justice was kind of just I'm still unclear on what they do. Is they just make judgment calls, I guess, on the religion and determine things like that? Kind of like when Moses setting up his father-in-law comes to him and sets up a thing like that.
Well, they're the supreme. So, like, if you are a member of the Baha'i faith, you get a vote, and like, you get a vote on your local stuff, and the local people, like, so there's a hierarchical structure, and they're at the very top of the religion. So, yeah.
Huh. Makes sense. Hebrew Bible study, more like Baha'i study. He said there's a link on Progressive Revelation.
Well, it's a YouTube link, so you're going to have to go take a look at that.
Yeah, some other time, I guess. Yeah.
Can you give an example that shows the why of what you said regarding it just makes sense in that context? So, I mean, when it comes to neurological differences between men and women, one very prominent difference is that women generally tend to be much more what's the personality trait called? Agreeable. Women tend to be a lot more agreeable than men are. It's just a fact. And it's like, if you take a group of men as opposed to a group of women, the group of men is less likely to be unanimous at any one time.
See, women can be pretty catty though. So I have one girls. It's intense.
They can be. Like, I'm sorry. You can try to argue it however you want, but like, there are physiological differences between men and women, and it's like, get over it. Just get over it.
It makes sense to me when you phrase it as like in form of a hierarchy, or as like someone being at the head, because then it makes sense to me with terms of because men or give the seat, and so they kind of identity, and so it kind of makes sense to me in that way. Because I don't know, I was listening to a thing earlier about there's actually some Greek thing on the Amazon, the myths of all the Amazon women and things like that.
Oh.
And it was making me think about all that stuff earlier, but yeah, that's why it would make more sense to me, honestly, because gosh, what was it? A while back, I know it might have been a Grail Country video, and someone mentioned the actual power of femininity and things like that, and they were talking about that.
Yeah.
And have you ever watched Game of Thrones?
Yes.
Yeah. See, I've talked to my youngest sister about this once, and I don't know if we ever actually did. We're thinking about trying to do a podcast episode on it and go through his female characters, because I was just like, man, they all just display like, such great, I feel like, areas of like feminine power through most of them. Like, but it's all the one I'm still kind of trying to figure out is because they all have these weird archetypal characters. Like you have, what's her name? Arya is kind of like develops into like a ninja, and so for some reason that just makes sense. And I think it's because they're kind of clothed in darkness, they're veiled, and there's a hiddenness, and that's why like that saying comes up: poison is a woman's weapon, because it's like it's veiled, because poison is actually veiled and things like that. And Marjorie was like another great character in that one. The one I don't know that I still really appreciate though is Brienne of Tarth. And I'm like, you have this female character that's extremely masculine, but somehow it still works in that story. And so I'm not quite sure.
Whenever you're dealing with any individual, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, there are men who are more effeminate than some women, and women who are more masculine than some men. Like, it's just a fact that if you live in the real world, you recognize that, right?
Yeah.
And
well,
it's just funny to me that people think that exceptions disprove a rule when actually exceptions prove the rule.
Yep. So there's the rule. Baha'i religion. You know, they have that. Well, they did have that in some circles of Christianity, but I don't think, and not in Protestant circles. That's probably not true.
Well, in some Protestant circles, they still don't allow women or ordaining women. And frankly, I think ordaining women was one of the biggest mistakes any religion has made in the history of humanity, and continues to prove itself to be a huge mistake. Like, it just shows itself to be a mistake over and over again. And people have tried it over and over again, and it fails every single time.
Yeah. I'm not sure what to say, because like I feel like I agree with you, and so I kind of wish there was someone else in the conversation to kind of push back against this little. Sandy, hop in here. She said she's not even arguing; she's just curious.
Yeah, look, even Paul Vanderklay, like my joke and ribbing to him, because he was big on, he was one of the people who pushed for the CRC to ordain women, and he was a mentor to lots of women who became pastors. And he just, I mean, while he refuses to admit it, like, you listen to him and you see he recognizes it was one of the biggest mistakes that the CRC has made. And it is. Like, the CRC is going to split now because of that.
Andrew. Hey.
Andrew is getting baptized Sunday after next.
Yep.
Nice. Congratulations.
Oh, thanks, man.
Did you find out about the tattoo?
No, I probably should.
Sandy.
You probably should.
Yep.
Hi, Sandy.
And we're gonna have to figure out what we're gonna do. So his baptism is apparently at 6 a.m. So I'm not gonna be there.
7:30. 7:30.
7:30 a.m. And because he said 7:30 a.m., Sandy decided she doesn't want to be on this screen anymore.
So where are you getting baptized? Is there like a specific place at a church, or?
St. Mark's. Yeah, church.
In the middle of the Jewish ghetto in Los Angeles is his church.
Yeah.
which is just hilarious to me.
Uh-huh.
Like it's in the very center of the Orthodox Jewish community in Los Angeles.
Mhm. Yeah, it's part of why I first popped on this channel.
Because you kept on seeing Orthodox Jews everywhere every
Yeah,
time you
pretty
went to
much.
church.
Uh-huh.
Like Kosher Restaurant Row is literally like a stone's throw. There's like 30 kosher restaurants a stone's throw. Like I deliberately tried to avoid kosher restaurants when we went a few weeks ago when we went to visit his church. I was like, okay, here, I'll go find a restaurant that's not kosher so that it'll be open. Guess what? It was kosher.
Mhm.
Like I was deliberately looking for non-kosher restaurants and I couldn't find one.
Yeah, it's where the whatever kosher kebab place, right? Kebab and Chinese food, something like that.
Oh yeah.
It's-
Come on. So there's a kosher restaurant in Los Angeles called Kola Ferengi, which is Hebrew, which is Farsi for literally it means foreign hat. It means like exotic hat, like somebody who wears an exotic hat. And it's kebab and Chinese food. So it's Persian food and Chinese food. Kosher Persian food and Chinese food. So I guess we could go there for lunch, but it's going to be filled with people on a Sunday. And everybody's going to be wondering why I'm going there with a bunch of goyim. People will come up to me. Yeah, I'm here for my friend's baptism. Yeah, that'll be.
Well,
Hello, Sandy. How are you doing?
I'm doing well.
How's work?
We're resetting mods, which means all of those places where they put up the modular different displays to put things on, they're working through redoing the entire store. So if you have an item that's here, it might suddenly move to be 6 inches that way.
Okay. Are you excited about Chino?
I am very excited.
What are you going to be camping?
Yes.
Gosh, I wish you-
I hope you got your reservation because apparently all the camping spots are filled up.
Yep.
And you're flying into Ontario, I'm guessing, or LAX?
No, I was going to fly into Ontario, but I'm flying into LAX.
Yeah, I don't know that there are direct flights from Ontario from Canada that aren't prohibitively expensive.
Yeah, they were a little more expensive and longer. I thought about it just because being closer, but I'm actually connecting. I actually organized my flights to connect with somebody else from the estuary leadership thing that John does. And also,
I can come pick you up at LAX. It's not a problem.
Oh, that's very nice. Thank you. But I'm coming in the same time as he is. He's from the East Coast down in Nova Scotia.
So Father Eric actually decided to rent a minivan. So he's gonna have and he intends to shuttle people.
Yep.
And I have an SUV. So I'm gonna be, and I live pretty close to LAX. So
Perfect.
yeah, it's not a problem. Although it's an hour's drive. Well, with traffic, it's like 2 hours drive from where I am to Chino.
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to it. I did lose my offer of a loaned sleeping bag because the lady from Michigan's run into some issues and is not coming.
I have an extra sleeping bag.
Seriously?
Yep.
If I could borrow it, that would be awesome.
Sure, it's all
Do
yours.
you have any foam or like any bad neck padding of any kind?
I mean, there's my exercise pad you could use.
Yeah,
We'll
that would.
figure it out. And frankly, I mean, it's not like that stuff's that expensive.
No, I looked up. There's a Walmart on the way. There's a couple of camping stores. Somewhat. I mean,
I personally buy things at Big Five, but Caleb thinks that's ghetto of me. Like he actually said that. He took me to REI, and REI is like this little, really posh camping thing.
oh
That's
my
where I
goodness.
got my sleeping bag. And I was like, I always buy things at Big Five, and he's like, that's ghetto. I'm like, okay.
When they still existed, we used to get stuff cheap at the army surplus. It's like, yeah. No.
I'm too ghetto for Caleb.
That should make you cool somehow, you know.
I guess. Okay.
Something.
Andrew has midterms, but he's gonna come to the dinner after the paintball on Thursday.
Excellent.
I have a
Which
question. Are
means
you
I'm
playing
gonna have to
paintball?
drive him.
So you're playing paintball, Jacob?
I
No.
am not playing paintball.
Oh. Is it
I-
like in a paintball arena, or is it just out in the woods?
No, it's at a paintball place. Yeah.
Let's see, paintball's
Yeah.
expensive.
Going
Do you have
to
to sign up for the
Mayhem?
dinner?
You
You
planning
have
to watch it?
What'd you say, Andrew?
Do you have to sign up for the dinner or anything?
Yeah, you should sign up for the dinner.
Ah, shit.
So
Well,
at this
although
point-
like it's like $10. Like, and yeah, just let John know you're coming. You were saying, Sandy.
oh, I just went through Grizz and I actually paid, knowing that I can't with my neck play paintball. I still paid for one and for dinner, thinking somebody else might need one paid for. So
Oh, that's really nice of you.
That means you have to play, Jacob.
No, it does not mean I have to play at all in any way, shape, or form.
It does.
And if I do play, then I can't drive Andrew to the dinner because he has class in the morning, right, Andrew?
When is this? Thursday?
Thursday?
No.
Yeah, you have class in the morning, Andrew.
Oh no!
If I have
That
to
sounds
teach the
fun.
class, you're gonna have class in the morning.
Is everybody camping? Is that like just out in a campground or something?
Well,
That sounds like so much fun.
I ended up renting out the camp thing because somebody had to put down a credit card and take responsibility. So like, please clean up after yourselves, guys, because I don't want to have to pay the cleaning fee. Thank you. But I figured I didn't sign up because I figured if it sells out, which it did, then I'm the person who needs it the least because I can just drive home and back, and I will be. And if it doesn't sell out, well, I'm biting it anyway. So, but hopefully I'm getting paid back because it was expensive. I'm pretty sure Grim's going to pay me
Hopefully.
back. Hopefully.
I'm trying to look at Gina right now.
And
Just
then
look at
Grim
some
and I, well, we'll see. But Grim's, I'm driving north after that Tuesday. Shadow's getting spayed, and after that, I am going to be driving up to go pick up what's her name, Happy.
Oh, nice.
Oh, nice. That's exciting.
And Grim is planning on going north, maybe, so we might do that together. But he's not sure what he's doing.
Nice. Yeah.
Looking to
Zach
see if
says
there's
my
any-
gender identity is Wasp from New Haven, Connecticut, and my pronouns are sailor, golfer, Harvard graduate.
Oh,
I'm trying to get Zach to move closer to here. Hello, Christopher. I don't actually know you, do I? Yeah, actually, you look familiar. Oh, is that Topher? That's Topher. I think that's Topher. Wow.
What?
Topher, you should jump on.
Topher. I've heard the name before.
Topher used to have a thing on Randos United. What did he call it? What did they call it? Salty and fresh. That's what him and Jeff used to call their little thingy they had on
Yeah, this sounds extremely familiar.
on Randos
I haven't-
United.
Okay. Yeah. I haven't been on Paul's Discord in a long time.
Me neither.
But yeah.
Wow,
speaking of-
Krish is here too.
What?
We have so many people watching. There's like 12 people watching this. Why are 12
Yeah.
people watching us sitting around talking
That's
about
because we're not
Andrew
talking
getting
about the Bible.
baptized?
Yeah. If we were talking about the Bible, then no, I'm just kidding. Because we're talking about all sorts of hot topics. Lady preachers, camping.
That sounds right. Yeah, that's probably his number.
Okay,
Hmm.
awesome. John.
John Van Donk. Yes. Yeah, so Andrew apparently has to get baptized because they're waiting to ordain him and they can't ordain him until after the baptism. And
Some
it's like
reason.
totally messing up their schedule.
No,
What do you do after you're ordained?
I don't know.
You just
Candy
marry
cotton.
people?
No, so he has to be ordained a deacon in order to read things in church.
Mhm.
mm. So
What you
Andrew,
gonna
is
read?
this similar to like my brother-in-law did go through to be a pastor, but in the Anglican church you had to be ordained as a deacon prior to and whilst doing studies. Are you doing a thing like that, or is this just specifically as a reader?
Just to be a deacon. Pretty much every every guy who's able to in the Coptic Church becomes a deacon. They even got like little kids as deacons, so yeah. It's
They have 7 ranks of deacons.
yeah,
What? Wow.
I think so.
What?
Something like that, right?
Yeah, so the guy who gave us the tour said he was the 5th rank, which meant that he was allowed to read the Gospels. Is that right? And then
Okay.
below that is somebody who gets to read not the Gospels, and below that is somebody who gets to chant. And Andrew's already chanting, even though he's not even baptized. And like, if the Pope ever finds out, Andrew's going to be in big trouble.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hey, Garth. And in case you didn't know, the only Pope in the world is not. So the Roman Catholic Pope is not officially called the Pope. The only Pope is Pope Tadros II.
He's the first. Well,
He's
the first person.
first Pope?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Tadros II is the first Pope.
The Coptic Church was the first church that used the term Pope. So, yeah. People forget that like the Oriental Orthodox churches, like way back in the day, were like the majority of Christianity. So,
He's still the Bishop of Alexandria, right?
Mhm. Yep.
And Coptic is apparently Elijah says, knowing Francis, I think it'd be okay with that. Yeah, Francis wouldn't mind if you were reading, despite not being baptized. What was I gonna say?
If you're moving through heresies, I've read in church, and I'm a woman, so
How dare you?
I know. This is really what they're arguing about over the CRC. It's not all the other stuff. They're making that up. It's just the fact.
Well, I mean, when the fact is, when Paul Vanderklay, when he made clear what was going on, like the split is ultimately over women's ordination.
I know.
It's and like, yeah. So Garth says, okay, I have to know, have any of you seen the show The Chosen? I tried watching some episodes, and I'll say they tried very hard to make Jesus more Jewish, but if you don't have Jesus wearing a talit, then I think you are inherently trying not to make Jesus so Jewish that Christians would mind, despite the fact that it is very clear in the entirety of the Gospels that Jesus must have worn a talit. So, like, Jesus definitely wore a talit gadol. And, like, in any show, if you show him wearing a talit gadol, they're, like, going to say, you're saying Jesus is a Pharisee. And you kind of are, because he was. But all the Christians would get mad. And that's why none of the shows, no matter how authentic they try to be, will never, ever show him wearing a talit gadol. Not a Protestant one, at least.
If they have talit gadol, does that mean that they also have... Oh, now I'm going to lose it. All I can think of is Aleph and Beth with the...
phylacteries?
That mean... Well, no, if you have gadol, does that not mean that you would have a talit...
Katan?
Yeah.
If you wear a talit gadol, that doesn't necessarily mean you wear a talit katan. I mean,
no, but
modern...
they do
What?
exist. But
yeah. There is a talit katan and there's a talit gadol, and Jesus, so quite likely wore both. He probably wore both. I hate it when Jesus is too Jewy, gross. Well, that's what it's gonna be. Humble, albeit heretical opinion: Francis needs to be excommunicated, a la John Wick. Would make for a badass Christian flick. I still haven't watched John Wick, and I've heard that they kill puppies, and I don't like watching shows where they kill puppies.
That's what sets him off. That's the best part, because that's when you start rooting for him, because they kill his puppy, and he's like, "All right, it's too much," and he just
so. Okay,
You're
spoiler alert for anybody who watches. Tried to watch Agent. What's that thing with Agent Coulson? Like that, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
I haven't watched
it.
I tried watching it. Spoiler alert. One of the things they have is like killing puppies, and I was like, nope, I'm not watching this after they have puppy killing.
See, John Wick would be all over that. John Wick is the killer of puppies. So he finds out you kill puppies, he'll come get you.
Well, I mean, even in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., I think they did that, but I think like just there are certain things you shouldn't do, like kill puppies.
Have you seen that movie, Chaos Walking, with the
I have not.
Spider-Man guy? There's a... Do you want to spoil it? I don't have to. Okay, I'm going to. But there's a puppy killing scene in that one. That's really rough.
You know, any show that has puppy killing, like you just don't need to watch it. Sometimes they can imply that a puppy was killed off screen, like that. I'm okay with. Like if a baby off screen supposedly like is shown maybe having been killed, especially what was that? What was that? So it was It wasn't Netflix. It was a Hulu show about Mormons, and it was based on a real story.
Oh,
Like Under the Banner of Heaven, I think it is, or something like that. And frankly, I thought it was very anti-religious, but it was based on an actual real story where a baby was in fact murdered, and I think they did it. They did that pretty tastefully.
I have another question. Have you seen Milo and Otis?
I have not seen Milo and Otis.
Okay, because supposedly there was actual killings of puppies and kittens in the making of that film.
ooh, that's not good.
It's a
Oh,
it's a
you
great,
know what?
it's
I
a great
heard
film,
about
though.
this.
It's a
What
wonderful
actually
film.
happened? What actually happened, if I remember correctly, was there was a video of it looked like a puppy was struggling in the water, and it was like a clip because you get these animal rights activists who are absolutely opposed to animals ever being in movies whatsoever. They think it should all be CGI. And it's like, dog actors are people too, you know. I think there needs to be an Oscar for best dog in movie.
Yeah, I don't know if it was true accusations, but like if you watch the film, I watched it all the time growing up. I thought it was a great film. But there's like a part where like the cat I think is in a box and it goes down a river and then it ends up going over a waterfall. And so they're saying they actually sent a real cat over the waterfall, which they may have done because it's an older film. So I don't know, but I think that was the accusation. But there's stuff like that all the time. I think a hawk or an owl attacks the cat at one point or something.
Well, I have to say, like 40, 50 years ago, I'm sure when they didn't mind, like they were killing animals on screen all the time. Like I'm sure the older movies, but now we should have an Oscar for best male dog in a movie, best female dog in a movie, best puppy in a movie, best kitten in a movie, best bird in a movie.
Yeah, you should set this up.
Good
I would
one.
watch this.
It would be much better than the actual Oscars, which I haven't watched in years.
Yeah.
True. Ooh.
I
So-
think
Andrew,
Mhm.
if I were to, somebody asked me if they were to get you an icon for your baptism, where would they find one? Because I have no idea where I tried Googling it and I could not find any Fanus, anything for under $3,000. But for $3,000, you can get a Fanus painting of a clown, apparently. That's the only thing I could find on the internet was for $3,000 Fanus and a pointillist, like it was like garbage. It was like, no, I wasn't gonna pay $3 for that, much less $3,000.
So there's UK Coptic icons.
UK Coptic
Coptic. Yep.
icons. But if we, you know what? So yeah, I actually did find that, and they have for like $20, they have these icon painting kits, paint by numbers. I thought that would be perfect for you. That was the suggestion I gave. Icon painting kit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that'd be great.
Elijah thinks we should be talking about the Bible in Bible study. Obviously, he knows nothing about the Bible. Stop being so Protestant, Elijah. This is not how Bible studies work, Elijah. We're trying to beat all this Protestantism out of him. He's a new Noahide and doesn't know genuine religion yet.
The Clown of Babylon. He's a Noahide.
The Clown of Babylon,
Elijah, right?
as far as I know, is trying to be a Noahide. But every time we tell him he needs to have a girlfriend in order to be a Noahide, he doesn't quite get it.
He's in the comment section. Like, I don't know if I've actually spoken to him and like if he's got on the chat before or not.
Well, Elijah only comes on wearing a mask and his silly clown hat.
Oh, okay. I see.
Now
Yeah, we
Chezi's
need Torah.
doing it. Chezi's saying we need to do Torah.
Well, I have
are
two
Copts
questions.
kind of like Black Hebrew Israelites of Christendom?
I didn't even know about Black Hebrew Israelites.
I don't hide from Noah, and I don't need a girlfriend. He says.
What does that mean? To hide
Okay,
from Noah?
we should be probably studying some sort of Torah.
Speaking of Noah, okay, so I had a question around Noah. Is there anything that in Judaism around the mountain that he lands on? Because I know it comes back up in regards to Nineveh when they kill that. Is it Sennacherib or something? He gets
Sennacherib?
killed. Yeah, and his sons flee to Mount Ararat, or however you say it.
So I was actually Father Stephen sent me this. Thank you, Father Stephen. It's his new book, and in it is the Book of Jubilees. And the Book of Jubilees, while it's not in the Jewish Bible, it is in some Christian Bibles like Andrew's, and it is the first written reference we have to Noahides.
Oh wow!
So it actually refers to the covenant of Noah and the 7 mitzvot of Bnei Noah, I believe. I don't remember. Like, I guess I should probably find it. But other than that, like, I don't know that Noah was like as big a deal in Judaism as he was in Christianity and Islam. Like, okay, so let's do Sephardia.
Okay, well, yeah, I was curious if there's a connection between that mountain and the flood. And I guess one of the reasons I'm asking is because you have the flood and Moses lands on that mountain, and then you have
What
Assyria.
chapter is Noah?
Genesis.
12?
Genesis. I want to say
9.
it's 8. Or
8 and 9.
9 comes down. Yeah.
Where does it talk about Ararat?
Let's see.
Yeah, it would be
think
8.
8. Trying to see if it says the name of the mountain, but it's verse 4. But but Nineveh is where it mentions it again. I think in Isaiah, the Book of Kings. But Nineveh is I didn't know if there's some connection to the flood too, because Jonah is supposed to go to Nineveh. He's swallowed by the whale, and it mentions something about the floodwaters in Jonah, I think, as well.
So according to the BDB, which is Brown Driver Briggs Dictionary, it is mentioned in Jeremiah 51:27.
Ooh.
So let's open up Jeremiah 51:27.
Oh, that's where is that where he throws that book in there? No.
Sta'u nes ba'aretz tik'u shofar bagoyim kachu alehem goyim hashmiu aleha mamlachot arat mini va'ashkenaz pikdu aleha tifsar ha'alu sus keyelek samar. Set up a banner in the land, blow a shofar among the nations, prepare the nations against her, call together against her the kingdoms of Ararat, Mini, and Ashkenaz, appoint a captain against her, cause the horses to come up like bristling locusts. That doesn't say much.
No, it's talking about Babylon in there, and eventually they throw them into the Euphrates or something like that.
Second Kings 19:37.
Yep, that's the one I was talking about, where his sons flee to that mountain.
And it came to pass as he was worshiping in the house of Nisroch, his god, that Adramelech and Shar-Ezer, his sons, smote him with the sword, and they escaped into the land of Ararat. And Esarhaddon, his son, reigned in his stead. Let's see what the commentaries say.
Yeah, what is this god? I'm curious about this god he's worshiping too. 2 Kings 19.
Nisroch. Well, let's see what the Malbim says. Is there a Malbim? I don't see a Malbim on here. How am I supposed to study Nach without the Malbim? There are no women here. I don't know Nach.
It's okay, I got it covered. I'm just kidding.
Rashi says, in the temple of Nisroch, a board from Noah's Ark. Interesting.
Wait, what is that? A board from Noah's Ark.
Yeah, so the god that they were worshipping was apparently this is Neser Metivato. Oh, that's what. So yeah, so Nisroch. So the word Neser means like a plank. Interesting.
Weird. Wait, that's interesting. Because I was looking at the Blue Letter Bible app and it was saying an eagle, which is not even the same at all.
That's Nesher. That's a different word.
Oh.
Yeah, that's
why would
that's
they
with
do
a
that?
that's with a shin, not with a samech.
So, but it's really they're worshiping a plank from Noah's Ark. Is what it's saying.
That's what Barashi says, and Sanhedrin 96a. Let's see what that says.
It's really interesting. I'm not sure what to do with that.
Does that mean they set it up as an idol then?
So this is what the Talmud says. So let's see what the Talmud says. Okay. So it's talking about Sennacherib. So, okay. Rather, this is the incident depicted in the verse, the Holy One, blessed be he, came and appeared to Sennacherib as an old man. God said to him, when you go to the kings of the east and west, whose children you brought and killed, what will you say to them? Sennacherib said to the Holy One, blessed be he, that man, referring to himself, also sits overcome with the same fear, as I do not know what to say to them. Sennacherib said to the Holy One, blessed be he, what should we do? The Holy One, blessed be he, said to him, go and change your appearance so that they will not recognize you. Sennacherib asked him, with what shall I change it? God said to him, go bring me scissors and I will shear you myself. Sennacherib asked, from where should I bring the scissors? The Holy One, blessed be he, said to him, go to that house and bring them. He went and found ministering angels who came and appeared to Sennacherib as men, and the angels were grinding date pits. Sennacherib said to them, give me scissors. The ministering angel said to him, grind a seah, that's it's a measure, dry measure, of pits, and we will give it to you. He ground a seah of pits, and they gave him scissors. By the time he came back with the scissors, it grew dark. The Holy One, blessed be he, said to Sennacherib, go and bring fire to provide light. Sennacherib went and brought fire. While he was fanning it, the fire ignited his beard, and it spread and sheared his head and his beard. The sages said, this is the meaning of that which is written, and it shall also destroy the beard. Isaiah 7:20. Rav Papa said, that this is in accordance with the adage that people say, if you scorch a Gentile and it is pleasant for him, ignite a fire in his beard, and you will never tire of ridiculing him. Okay? It
I like
means
this.
that if one does not protest when one ridicules him, they will escalate the ridicule. The adage is based upon this incident involving Sennacherib. Sennacherib went and found a beam from Noah's ark, from which he fashioned a god. He said, "This beam is the great God who delivered Noah from the flood." He said, "If that man," referring to himself, "goes and succeeds, he will sacrifice his 2 sons before you." His sons heard his commitment and killed him. This is the meaning of that which is written. And it came to pass, as he was worshipping in the house of Nisroch, his god, that Adramelech and Sarazar, his sons, smote him with the sword, and they fled to Ararat, where Noah's ark had come to rest. The Gemara explains that this interpretation is based upon the etymology similarly between Neser, the Hebrew word for beam, and Nisroch, the god that Sennacherib fashioned from a beam.
Hmm.
So there you go. Now you understand
Yeah,
that
no, I understand.
whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm
Wasn't
actually
that
really glad I
simple?
asked about that.
What?
No, but that's extreme. I'm really glad I asked about it. That's extremely fascinating. That's what I was wondering, if there was a connection between the flood and the Assyrians and Nineveh and all that stuff.
Well, apparently Sennacherib took a beam from Noah's Ark
Noah's Ark.
and
All right.
turned it into a god called Nesrach.
That's amazing. I'm writing that down in my Bible right now. I am. I'm not kidding.
That's from Sanhedrin 96a, if in case you were wanted a
Wow.
thing. Yeah.
That's super fascinating. I'm not sure what to do with that yet, but it's really interesting. Huh. Were the Assyrians known for violence, right?
Jonathan says, "What idiot worships a beam of wood? I truly cannot comprehend this. Talk about planking." Were the Babylonians known for violence? Well,
The Assyrians.
Assyrians?
I thought they were. That's okay. Because
Yes.
before
They're
the
ones
flood,
that-
yeah, before the flood in Genesis, it says the earth was filled with violence, and so that's why I was wondering
Hamas. Yeah, what does that have to do with Syrians?
if that was what their kingdom
they're giants,
was
man.
established off of,
Okay,
was violence.
somebody has to teach me, how do you open up peanuts from the shell without getting peanut shell pieces all over your apartment?
You eat the shell. Just eat the whole thing. I had a friend who used to do that actually.
Oh,
He would
really?
eat
Oh,
the whole thing. Yeah, I don't know why.
Eat the shell?
Yeah, he just eat the whole thing. I was like, that's weird. Yeah.
Come
yeah.
on, Sandy. You have to have a good way for me to eat these peanuts without getting shells all over my apartment.
The bag is a temporary means of moving it from place of production to place of store. You can take it and put it in a bowl. It's deep enough you can break them into the bowl and leave the shells behind.
Yeah.
A bowl. That would require me to. So Garth eats the shells.
Oh,
Oh,
there you go. There you
no.
Probably good fiber, I guess.
Is it?
I wouldn't
I don't
think
know.
so.
I'm guessing. What?
No.
Fibrous, right? I don't know. Wasn't it? I had another question. Oh yeah, I was supposed to ask about swine as well. The symbolism
Why were
of
you?
swine. Me and
So-
Stu were talking about it in Boxer.
The word chazir has the same root in Hebrew as choser, which means to turn back.
to repent.
Yep.
You could say that.
Towards. Okay.
And there is a rabbinic interpretation which I really liked. So the Bible specifically mentions that camels and pigs are not kosher. A pig has cloven hooves but doesn't chew its cud, and a camel chews its cud but it doesn't have cloven hooves, right? And so Esav, right, Edom, Jacob's brother, is compared to a pig and Rome, which has cloven hooves but doesn't chew its cud because it's always thinking about the future and not enough about the past. And a camel is symbolic of Ishmael and Islam, which is constantly preoccupied about the past and doesn't think enough about the future. But a kosher animal has to have a balance of both.
So why is it the pig is too concerned about the future, and that would cause him to?
Because a cloven hooves, right, allow you to run better than, like, so horses, which have cloven hooves, are able to run faster than camels, which don't have cloven hooves.
Horses have cloven? I didn't think horses have cloven hooves.
Oh, they have hooves. They don't have cloven hooves. They have hooves.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So the camel is too focused on the past because it moves slower, I guess?
It also chews its cud. So chewing its cud is like regurgitating the past.
Oh, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, I liked that explanation. Even though the rabbi I heard it from ultimately turned out to be somebody I was like, I thought this was a really good guy, and eventually I was like, not as good of a guy as I thought he was. But I learned things from him.
So what's the deal with the Ishmaelites and the moon and like the crescents, the crescent moon, things like that?
Good question.
I feel like that's mentioned more than once in the Bible. But
I've so like a lot of rabbinic symbolic interpretations has like Ishmael and Islam and Esav and Christianity, right? And so Islam, it has a lunar calendar, and so Ramadan actually, it's just a lunar calendar. So Ramadan actually moves around the year, right? It doesn't.
Oh, that makes yeah,
because they don't have the leap years that Judaism does with an extra month. We have 7 extra months every 19 years. So we have a lunisolar calendar, and Christianity doesn't have a lunar calendar. It only has a solar calendar.
yeah.
that's interesting.
So once again, Judaism is perfection between Christianity and Islam.
That's interesting.
All that balance. They spend too much time thinking about halakha.
And where's Baha'i in all this?
Impossible. Yeah, literally impossible. If not for Islam, Christianity would have a much better claim to truth than it does. But it's Islam which helps Christians understand that Judaism's always been right.
You know, I actually don't disagree with that.
Mm-hmm.
Me neither.
What does he mean by people use ruminating incorrectly?
Because
We were talking about camels, like spending too much time thinking about the past. I think.
All right, let's go through the symbolism of animals here. We got camels, we got pigs. What else is there in the Bible? There's oxen, sheep, goats. What else can we do?
Ostrich.
Ostrich, that's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah, Jesse loves the fact that like
an ostrich.
in Job, God makes fun of the stupidity of the ostrich.
I do. I like that too. That is a good part. There's also there's the ravens in Job. Job, he goes through a lot in that one.
Ravens and doves.
What else is there? Dragons. There's dragons.
Mm-hmm.
Can't forget dragons.
Dragons and doves and donkeys.
Did I? Oh, so the word donkey in Hebrew, chamor.
Mm-hmm.
So it has the same root as chamar, which means like material and like materiality. Like it's a biblical Hebrew way of referring to the material as opposed to the spiritual. And so whenever it says that, like it talks about donkeys, there are rabbinic interpretations about like the physical and material aspects of things, and like when it says vayachbosh chamaro, right, that he saddled his donkey, right? So this actually happens all over the Bible. Like there's all this thing, like gets up in the morning and he saddles his donkey. This is a continual, especially in Hasidic interpretation of like you have to, that's like considered one of the primary types of work spiritual work you have to do in the world, is to prepare the material so that it can receive the spiritual control over it. So you saddle the materiality with your spirituality. Like one of the things one of my rabbis once said was, yeah, if you have to, you can slaughter your evil inclination, your animal instincts, but better than slaughtering it is to put a saddle on it and ride it like a horse. Like that was the thing he said, which I've tried to take to heart all through my life, which is take your evil inclination and saddle it and try to ride it like a horse.
That's interesting. Odd question. I was talking earlier with some of the people in the estuary leadership. One of the phrases from New Testament that comes up was that sense of dying to self. Is that same idea because we were talking about who's in control of your life kind of thing. Like, we were talking about the world and other stuff. But anyway, it kind of came around to that. So is the sense of saying, like, if I was to put to death my evil inclination, that was one of the things that I was talking to my pastor about when our family was breaking up. Because they always say you need to die. Die to self, and some people say instead of saying die with Christ, they say die to Christ or something like that, as in giving over your, like not me, but. And I remember asking him how literally they meant it, because it goes to that place of simply cutting something off. But where we were getting to is one of these things where I'm wondering, is it when you come up against stuff like earlier, we were saying, I said something about, you were talking about women in leadership and some of what's been going on over on my side of the thing. When you look at things that can bring chaos and can throw you apart and can actually bring out your worst qualities, there's often in Christian circles that talk of, like you have to, almost like you kill your will, but you don't, you can't really, but you have to die or let those elements die or have them be eradicated somehow. But you're saying it's better to actually saddle them. And there's something to that that's really important.
There is, but I have to make a differentiation. But just to answer Elijah, peanuts are the only nuts that you say Adama on. All other nuts you say Ha'etz, because peanuts come from the ground, whereas all other nuts grow on trees. Now, there is a difference between a spiritual evil and a material evil. So there's the evil inclination, which you want to, in fact, win over, as opposed to destroy. And then there are spiritual evils which you have to nullify. And so, to put it in Christian terms, I would say there are some crosses you have to pick up and bear, whereas sometimes you have to allow yourself to be killed.
Mm-hmm.
And the difference between those two are, in Hasidic philosophy, we would say that there is a nullification that needs to be done of your will in front of God's will. His will, not mine, be done.
Yep.
Whereas of the physical world and what's called the Nefesh HaBahamit, which is the animal soul, right? We say that needs to be saddled and conquered. And knowing the difference between the two is very, very difficult. And knowing what has a capacity to be that's an interesting question. What is the most valuable thing in your life? Knowing what has the capacity to, in fact, be saddled and used for good, as opposed to that which needs to be slaughtered and destroyed, is one of the hardest things you can discern.
I would believe so. And that's one of the interesting places as a person who grew up in the Christian faith is that you can tell me a billion times over that everything is okay because all of this stuff has been taken on by Christ. But at the same time, when I walk through things on a day-to-day basis, I absolutely know I have to do what you just said.
So, just to answer quickly, what is the most valuable thing in your life? The most valuable things in your life are those things for which you would be willing to give up your life. Hey, Sherry.
Sherry.
So I was listening to Paul's thing on Romans 8. And frankly, it's just infuriating, as Romans always is.
Wait, is this Paul, Apostle Paul, or Paul Vanderklay?
Yes.
Paul Vanderklay. Okay, both of them.
Paul
Both of them are
Vanderklay
good.
is giving is his Bible study is on Romans, which is by Paul of Tarsus.
Okay, so two Ball and Paul are
Yes,
are
the
okay.
both of them together.
Okay, all right. So
And because PVK is definitely explaining things in the Protestant way, like, it's just absolutely infuriating because he says, so apparently Romans 8:1
Yeah.
that's great.
says,
Let's give your interpretation.
not my interpretation, this is PVK's interpretation.
Yeah, all right. Do his, and then we'll do yours.
Well, I don't have an interpretation. I think
Okay.
Paul. I think Paul I think Paul of Tarsus was actually the horrible guy that Paul Vanderklay claims he was.
All right, it
verse-
says Go ahead,
that's 1 and 2. That's one of the ones I've had many
Go ahead, Jason. Read it.
difficult, discussions on.
there is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus, who do not walk according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. Read 2. For the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has made me free from the law of sin and death.
So, if that means what Paul Vanderklay and the Protestants believe, which
So what is it? Okay, yeah.
which is that once you accept Jesus, then you could be a murderer, you could be a rapist, you could be a horrible person, but no condemnation, nothing bad's ever going to happen to you. Like, you're not going to hell, no matter, you're not going to purgatory, you're not going to hell, you're not going, like, it's all just gone. God's not going to punish you because Jesus took all that away.
Yeah. I've heard this
Which
before.
is the most
what I grew up with.
disgusting blasphemy I have ever heard in my life.
Usually when I've heard this verse quoted in church, it has said, there is therefore now no condemnation to those who are in Christ Jesus. And they stop. And they don't even finish the sentence. And then they'll say, see, there's no condemnation in Jesus. And I'm like, well, read the second half. Like, do you think you're walking according to the Spirit if you're murdering people? So I think I would definitely agree with you, Jacob, and I would strongly push against that interpretation of it. Because what does it say? Like, this is where I was trying to turn here, in Hebrews, where it talks about, let's see, anyone who has rejected Moses' law dies without mercy on testimony of 2 or 3 witnesses. Of how much worse punishment do you suppose will he be worthy who has trampled the Son of God underfoot, counted the blood of the covenant by which he has sanctified a common thing, and insulted the Spirit of grace?
So this is Father Stephen and the idea of Paul within Judaism. Because it is just, Sherry. Because it is just.
But like, if you read further down in Romans, it almost immediately raises questions because it sounds complete in the one sense from some of the preaching, but when I get down to verse 4, even though it says right up to the beginning of verse 4 that all of this is done because Jesus has condemned sin in his own flesh, then it says, so in order that in order that the righteous requirement of the law might be fully met in us who do not live according to the flesh, but according to the Spirit. And I'm like, and it says those who live according to the flesh have their minds set on what the flesh desires. Those who live in accordance with the Spirit have their minds set on what the Spirit desires. And it goes on, which is what Jacob just said, in a sense. You actually look at what's going on in your physical and spiritual realm. You have to have the correct response to both. Is it not alluding to that at all? Because if it is, then what's the point of those two pieces, like back to back?
So there are things that I've done in my life that I'm like, yeah, God, like, it is only just that I am going to burn for those. Like, there's going to be some sort of punishment. Yes, punishment is just. It doesn't matter that it doesn't restore the victim. It matters that we deserve to receive a recompense for the evil that we do in life. And what makes most sense to me, and this is how it was explained to me, was once the veil is lifted, it's going to become absolutely clear to us how our sins affected the world. We're going to understand why God told us and why, like, counting the Omer was, which I forgot to do. Yes, I am 45 years old, and in the 33 years when 32 years when I have been old enough to actually need to count the Omer, I have not once made it the 7 weeks. And part of that is the fact that I don't recognize why it's so important that God decided to give me this commandment. Because if I did understand why it's that important, then I would probably do it. No, punishment is not a human conception of justice. That's wrong. It's in the Bible. The Bible clearly says this.
Well, I mean, Sherry should hop in here if she can. I guess I think I would disagree with that as well, because I would think punishment. I mean, doesn't that work on a scale? Like, to me, it just, you spank your children. That's my thought, I guess, with it, and that is bringing about justice in the world. That doesn't necessarily mean
fair is fair. It is fair that a person who does better than another person should receive. So if you're thinking, okay, so do you know that have you heard of the idea of opportunity cost in economics? So Andrew, you're apparently the only one who has. So explain opportunity cost.
If you do something, you lose the opportunity to do another.
But what does that mean? So if for example, I could be earning $100 an hour, and instead I take a job that is $20 an hour, while in absolute terms I'm gaining $20 an hour, in opportunity cost I am in fact losing $80 an hour, right? Because I could be doing that which, so
Speaking of opportunity cost, I've got to go study. So
go study.
have a good one, y'all.
yeah.
There's no free lunches, and no, it's not about jealousy. It really isn't. The fact is that somebody who does more, like, it's only fair that somebody who's been more righteous than I have, who's actually, in fact, and when it comes to the infinite, right? when you're comparing to infinity, the difference between 1 and a million and a Googleplex is they're all the same in comparison to infinity. And so in comparison to God, our righteousness is incomparable. But
Would you
in
say
comparison to
filthy
each
rags?
other, what?
Just kidding. I'm just kidding. I was making a Paul reference. I was about to say, would you say it's his filthy rags? But no, don't
But
say it. Don't say it.
in comparison to each other, I know that there are people who are better people than I am. I mean, you see it. You see there are people who are more holy, who are just better people. And for me, it only makes sense. It's not a question of jealousy. It makes sense that God, in his infinite justice and mercy, would reward people according to their righteousness and punish people according to their whatchamacallit.
So, question.
I-
In Judaism, is punishment from God a similar context or concept? Because I know you've often said that we hold a different concept of some of the things between Christianity and Judaism, or is it pretty much the same thing in that
What
context?
does it mean? I mean, I don't envision a literal lake of fire. Like, what does that even mean? Right? It's not that I envision it a literal lake of fire any more than I envision that in Genesis 1-2, there's like God's spirit is over some literal water, right? We don't understand the exact meaning of it, but Ezekiel 18 is very clear. Ezekiel 18 is very clear.
I was about to bring that because that, yeah, I was just about to bring that up because when you're talking, it doesn't. Because the Ezekiel, like that kind of seems to be what Sherry's saying. She said fair, like her comment on fairness, where someone's kind of claiming a God, you're not being fair. And that's kind of what's happening in Ezekiel 18, is they're saying, God, you're not being fair. Why should this repentant sinner get better, like be accepted and I'm not accepted? I think is what
because
point
God cares about repentance, and that God, like, I completely agree that justice is mercy and mercy is justice. But it is a perversion of that to say that nobody's going to get punished for the evil that they do.
So
yeah, I
when
would
you-
think. Sorry.
When you forgot your Omer, did you repent of that? Like, are you intending to continue the count, or do you give up? Because I think that's where the real sin falls in.
The problem is if you miss a night, then you can't. The point is to count every night, and I've tried many years. The problem is all the apps that remind you don't remind you on the Sabbath. And yeah, what about Job? What about Job? We believe that in the end, God makes things fair, right? So the difference between the Jewish understanding of Jesus's sacrifice and the Christian understanding of Jesus's sacrifice is precisely Isaiah 53. In Isaiah 53, ultimately, God makes it right. Go and actually read Isaiah 53 in its context. God, like, makes it right. That's why we believe in a resurrection of the dead. And Abel was, in fact, more righteous than Cain. And even though Cain will eventually will repent, and there's something beautiful in that, at the same time, that doesn't mean that, yes, what about Job? it will, in fact, and you see at the end of Job that Job is in fact restored. That's an important part of it. Yes, I know I can still count without the blessing.
Called out.
Maybe goes to my question that I was just going to ask you, even though it's not going to use those words.
It would be nice for once in my life to make all 7 weeks and actually not miss a single night. It would be nice.
It would be wonderful, but that goes to my question. That's to satisfy you. But if you get to the end of your life and with all of your sins you've committed and all of the ways you've talked to people about it and whatever else maybe you did that God noticed and you didn't, and he chose not to punish you as badly as you anticipate, would you accept it as equally as you would accept the punishment?
Well, whatever God says is fair is fair. And frankly, I'm not worried about the counting of the Omer. There are things I'm going to burn for which have nothing to do with counting for the Omer.
But this
is where I think you're again wrong, Sherry. It has exactly to do with Jesus, because as I understand Jesus, Jesus was teaching Judaism.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and Job is a book in the Jewish Bible, as is Isaiah.
Where I would think you say you're going to burn for things that you'd want to burn for things if you're truly repentant. That's at least my
I would agree with that. I think if you are truly repentant, you do. Yeah.
But also the idea that someone is righteous is kind of what it's getting at. Like that's what's going on. To me, at least, it's what's going on in Ezekiel, that he says, it's Deuteronomy 8 as well, where God declares you righteous, and then he says you trust in your own self-righteousness, and that's the stumbling block. So it's not necessarily, it's about something more fundamental than that. And Ezekiel 18 is kind of talking about that. You have a righteous, and you can do everything right and still find yourself in some sort of self-exaltation and pride and arrogance, and then you've missed the point completely, and then you're just kind of, if that makes sense. And
Elihu is actually the friend of Job that has the strongest point, and all the friends of Job have a point. You can't just dismiss what the friends of Job say. This is another thing I think Christians get wrong about the Bible. Like, they will take things that the Bible says and dismiss things. And it's like, no, you don't get to dismiss any of the chapters of Job. It's not that once you get to the end, the rest of it, same thing with the book of Jonah, right? It's not that the 4th chapter of Jonah completely negates the first 3 chapters. That's not how it works. Though you may be used by kings or men of power, your soul is your keeping alone. When you stand before God, you cannot say, I was told by others to do thus. King Baldwin IV of Jerusalem. I have no idea who that is. Job's friends called his righteousness wicked. God made Job's friends offer sacrifices because his wrath was kindled against them. I meant that I wasn't comparing Job to Christ. I think you should compare Job to Christ, actually. And I think it's important to recognize that, it's Job's friends. So this is the thing. It's like, I'm not a universalist. I am not a universalist. I believe that there is punishment and there is mercy and there is justice. And these things do not negate each other. Like, some people have chosen to be very bad. And it's not one or the other, Sherry. It's not one or the other. It's not that Job's friends had no point, and it's not that they were absolutely right. this is the story of the Hebrew Bible. There are many, many people, and none of them are perfect, and yet all of them are there to teach us something. This is how the Jewish Bible is so different from the Gospels. The Gospels as how most Christians understand it, because the way you have with Mary Sue Jesus, Jesus never repents, Jesus never says anything wrong, Jesus is always Jesus does no wrong by Mary Sue Jesus standards, but that's actually not the Jesus of the Bible, of the Gospels. It actually isn't. What?
What is it? I forgot what Mary Sue Jesus is. Is that just like the sinless Jesus or something?
Mary Sue is a trope in stories where, so it comes from Star Trek fan fiction, where people would write themselves into the story, kind of like Wesley Crusher. You know, this kid who like does everything great, right? And it's Chezi says he messed up some closets he built. So okay, so let's talk about Jesus and when he's a kid, and I believe this is in Luke. And
I don't. Yeah.
And
12 people.
his parents are looking for him, and they go and they find him, and they're like, "Why didn't you tell us?" And he's like, "Well, I was in my father's house, right?" And it's like, I hope Joseph spanked him. I hope Joseph spanked him.
No, this is a topic I've been pinging around, honestly.
Come on. No, you tell your mother. Why couldn't, if Mary Sue Jesus knows everything and is so smart, when during that whole 2 weeks could he not tell his mom, right? He needed a spanking.
Does try to tell you that he's fully human. If he's fully human, he'd get around spanking.
He needed a spanking. I need to get some water. I'll be back.
What were you gonna look up, Jason?
I don't remember now. I don't know. Oh, yeah.
I like having my thoughts challenged.
Yeah, same here. I'm not quite sure what the commentary was saying was that it's everything all at once. Stop comparing Judaism to Christianity. That's just a distraction. I don't understand. That's why I wish you would hop in here. I don't know. I guess I was gonna say before Jacob left was that I've actually been like thinking about that a lot more. The idea of like even the sinless nature of Christ, and it doesn't really even bother me. I guess it would depend in what manner. I guess he sinned. I'm not sure I'm willing to make the leap that I would say he sinned in the act of garden, like Genesis 1. But I think it would be almost impossible to say that he never missed the mark, because I don't know how a child begins to even walk. You know, so he had to have, unless he just was walking around and like did everything perfect all the time. I don't know how you wouldn't miss the mark at some point. And then in that way, he needs mercy as much as anyone else, and he's gonna get it from his mother, you would think, because why wouldn't his mother just kill him the first time he messes up, you know? And I don't know. No, don't stop talking, Sherry. I'm just a little, I guess, confused. But I guess I've just been thinking about it because
thing. Like she's just sticking her head out. That's the funniest thing.
But I guess I've just been thinking about it because when I went on the EA Dawa channel too, they were asking me about the Prophet Muhammad and stuff like that, and asking me why I wouldn't follow the Prophet Muhammad. And this kind of gets into the conversation I had with my parents at the beginning of the year too. Is I'm like, when I was asking, and you can ask different Christians like why Jesus the Messiah, like why you would follow Jesus, and you'll probably get a bunch of different answers, but it's not about the miracles to me, and it's not about the prophetic whatever, because they were talking about Muhammad on the EA channel and saying how he's prophesied all these things, and you can see that everything he prophesied was coming true. And I'm like, well, that's not gonna make me believe that someone's the Messiah. Like someone could come along and do that now, and I'm like, why is that compelling to me? Like, why does that make me want to follow him? Or if someone comes along and says, see, I've never sinned, I've never messed up, that would absolutely not make me follow them, because that to me, and that gets into the whole thing where like Luke Thompson will say that too, is Christ and Antichrist are a hair's breadth away. Because if I'm following someone because they have never messed up, then they could easily just slip into this point where like they don't need God. You don't need God if you never messed up. You don't need forgiveness. You need things like that.
I have to smack down all this niceness. Like
Okay.
Sherry's like, that's unkind, Jacob, and Chazi's like, Jacob, be nice.
Wait,
No,
what
no,
did
no,
you
no,
do?
no, no.
What did you do?
He
She's
said
saying
that
stop
before.
comparing Judaism to Christianity. That's just a distraction.
Where are you mean? Were you being mean?
Okay, so I am
Mark. That's
no.
probably
I am very adamant about this. We let our ideas die so we don't have to. And so like I will attack ideas. I do attack ideas. I think it's necessary for us to attack ideas. So I have tried to murder Martin Luther and John Calvin many, many times, and I will continue to do so.
not
but
until time travel, Jacob.
What?
Not until time travel.
Well, that's the thing, is I prefer to kill these effigies because
What?
I think we need
What
to
are your
allow human beings, saints represent ideas to us, and we allow our saints to die, and we change saints and we convert. Like that conversion, that capacity to be like, no, I disagree with that, is in fact what allows us to truly make peace in the world and to save. That is the saving grace of scripture and logos, is the capacity for it to convert us and to change, for the spiritual to change the material. And so that spiritual battle which we engage in, right? That spiritual battle that I try to do with, for example, Martin Luther, it is the redemption of the material.
You used a
I'm
word
confused.
earlier. Not, was it negating something, or I'm probably mixing it up because I was talking about how the good and the evil, and the evil being a place where we can feel we're good. But
Kezi, when have I ever talked without love? I am the most loving person you've ever met.
Can I ask a question here? I'm not
No.
sure what they're even referring to. Like, but what's going on? Like, I really honestly
I'm
don't
not
know what
sure.
they're referring to.
I'm not
What
sure.
do you mean?
Okay, so for a lot of people, disagreeing with their ideas, saying you're wrong, is a personal attack.
Okay, but she was trying to make a point about Job, and it seemed to be when you were talking about Job. So what was...
Look, I love
And she
Sherry.
hasn't
I'm going to go visit
I know you
Sherry
do.
on my way to pick up
I know
Happy.
you do. I know.
At the same time, I think Sherry's wrong about a lot of things. And that doesn't keep me from loving her.
So Jake,
I mean, I think Jacob's wrong about the water thing, to be fair, but it just makes me a heretic. But
Mhm.
I'm confused at yeah, I just didn't know. I just didn't hear when you said something mean. Like you sat down and then you said something about your cat
Yeah,
being,
he said
and
something.
then and then didn't reckon. I don't know. I
Well,
don't know.
look, this is actually something a lot of people like. For me, it was very difficult to see. Um, what are you trying to save me from? I am trying to save you from bad ideas. That's what I'm trying to save you from, Jerry. From bad spirits, from evil spirits that need to be exorcised.
Okay.
I
Not
was
much.
talking about this today too, actually.
What?
Evil spirits. I was talking about this today too.
No, I mean this is that's when we have to be able to we have to be able to confront bad ideas, because
What
when we
the?
don't, and honestly, like I was thinking a lot about this morning as I was taking my walk. So even with my dog not here, I still have to walk my dog because I need the walk myself.
Mhm.
So I was walking my dog who's not here this morning, and like I was thinking about a particular person who um, is being consumed by a lot of bad ideas, and it was like how, like,
To me.
I was trying to figure out. No, it's not you. I was trying to figure out how we're gonna deal with it, and it was like it's just so difficult, because the easiest thing to do is not. um yes, see, we can disagree and still love each other, Sherry. But I was really thinking about this person who, like, is just, and this is, I mean, some people will know who I'm talking about when I say this. This is the only person that I've considered um removing from my Discord server in order to punish them. And I told him if I was still a leader of a community, like I would, I would, I would have to, in fact, like excommunicate this person. Like this is the type of place where I understand what Ball of Tarsus says about giving someone up to Satan so that they may be redeemed.
That's a very hard place to be, because it impacts you and impacts the other person. And you can't necessarily predict how. You just have to do what you believe is right. Like I told you when I first came on, with leaving my ex, I know the reasons I chose to do that. And at the same time, I would say it was the right thing to do and the right time to do it, maybe even a little late. But at the same time, I deeply regret what it brought about in his life, because it left him to face things that he wasn't facing anyways, and he's got permanent disability from it. And I'm like, you can't stand between somebody and their troubles forever.
And sometimes just being too kind is just not kind. It
Yeah.
really isn't. It really isn't. And like I've said a billion times, Sherry, so um, when I am 45 now, and what I believe at 45 is not what I believed at 35, it's not what I believed at 25, certainly isn't what I would believed at 15, and certainly isn't what I believed at 5. So I hope to God that what I believe at 55 will be that much wiser and better than what I believe at 45. And so there's definitely things that I must be wrong about, but I only know what I know, and that's all I can know. And that's all. That is faith in the Logos. That is faith in actually speaking the truth. And like Jesus's mouth with the sword coming out of his mouth, right?
I was just thinking that image, the sword.
Yeah, it really is. That is the cutting nature of the Logos.
I wrote a song about that the other day, and I said the line was, "Jesus is coming back to kiss my head, but in his mouth is a sword." So deal
I
with
was
that.
listening to Spotify, and I'm listening to Spotify, and the song comes on, and I'm like, I don't remember Bob Dylan ever singing that. And then I looked at it, and it said Jason Schweitzer.
Well, thanks. That's a compliment, I guess.
You sound totally like Bob Dylan when you're singing, at least
I
in
don't know
your
how to sing
Spotify videos. Well, yeah, well, and that's
My
why we
sisters
love
can
you,
sing amazing, though.
Sherry.
Yeah.
Come on if you want, Sherry.
She can't.
She
She
said-
said.
Oh, she can't. Okay.
She's always 3 steps ahead of you because she's older. Is that what she's saying?
She
But
is indeed older than I
She is
am.
she is extremely wise.
Did
I
you
don't
just
know
call
if
her
I'm
extremely old? You're so
No, I
mean,
said-
Jason.
no, I
Why are
said
you so
wise.
mean to Sherry?
wise.
Jason, you're always so mean to people. I don't know why you're always so mean to people.
Oh my god. Let's just direct this at me now. All right.
Oh, it's
Oh, man.
9:30. We should say
Oh,
an
dear.
ending prayer before, so people who need to go to sleep. It's all you, Sandy. Give us a Protestant prayer.
See what I can come up with. Father, for your word, we thank you for your life that you give us every day. We thank you for the hope. I thank you. And what's to come in the world to come, I do thank you. Amen.
You're so much less Protestant than you used to be, Sandy.
I'm sorry. I'll have to go and
Yeah.
practice.
How are you liking reciting Psalms?
Very well. I'm not following the rules properly of going in order. I'm just popping around, like you said. So I'm trying to go on one where you can see which ones I've missed and make sure that I get them all in, and at least, because I'll say like 2 or 3 a day, and just. But I really like Psalm 1, so I keep going back there and kind of hanging out.
So the number one thing I tell people is the Bible is not a book you read from cover to cover. It's a library. You go and you check out the book you need at that moment. So yeah, I mean there are Psalms that I go back to a lot. But this may be the first time that I've gotten. So I actually got to Psalm 118 today. So this may be the first time I'm actually going to finish the entire book of Psalms.
That's good.
Yeah, I finally got to 118. Tomorrow's 119.
I cheated and I jumped to 119 a week ago.
It's a long one.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's gonna be a killer. I think I'm gonna do the whole thing, even though it's split up into 2. I think I'm gonna just go straight through.
I wanted to read it because you'd mentioned about the the style of poetry where it's got the
Acrostic.
yes.
Yeah. Every time I think of 119, I think of that story Rabbi Skobach told with the cloistered monk.
That's probably, yeah. I think that's where I heard you say that.
Yeah.
So what is this you're doing? You're reading Psalms in like a certain amount of time or something?
So there's a Jewish. Actually, I just bought. So let me.
I want to see if he's coming back with. Is that the one that has the commentary in it?
Sherry
Just
says
got
read
this
the
yesterday, and
I'll do
so
like
Yeah.
the book of Psalms is split up into 5 books,
okay.
but it's also split up into days of the week. So
I got it.
Nice.
say so you can say a number of psalms every day, and then by the end of the month you'll finish it. Or it's also split up by the days of the week. So some people will say the entirety of the book of Psalms every week.
Oh, wow.
And I know people who say the entirety of the book of Psalms every day.
You were saying that's hours.
Well, so if I remember correctly, Rebbetzin Davidi said she had it down to like 45 minutes.
That's
But
crazy. That's so wild.
she's been reciting the entire book like every
I can't
day
imagine.
at least once for like decades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just can't imagine that's possible with Psalm 19 being in there. If not 45
Well, she knows
minutes.
it in Hebrew, and I have to say it is shorter in Hebrew than it is in English, because like in English you have to make all the puns and stuff understood. So Hebrew just in general is a shorter language than English.
What
when
does-
we were in school, I mean, not like high school, but we were in elementary school. The teachers would punish you and make you write psalms multiple times. And then my mom heard about this and she went nuts, and she went and yelled at the principal teacher for desecrating God's word this way and using it as a punishment. And then she took me out of the classroom. But then she punished me as well, but just not by writing. But not by writing psalms. Though.
That's funny because I feel like my mom would do the opposite. She'd be like, "This is a great idea. I'm going to do this with my children. Make them write the scriptures."
Yeah, the kids are really taking it seriously after hours in school while writing down psalms. They're thinking, "Oh, what does this word mean? How does this connect to me?"
Yeah. So, what's your favorite psalm? Do you have one?
I don't have a favorite psalm specifically.
What's
when I was a child, Jacob, what's Samechet?
Samechet 68.
68. I think it's 68. I think. I could be wrong.
Let me find Samechet.
David is running away from Saul, as he does, and he's in the desert, and he's talking about, in Hebrew it's
Samechet is really long. Yakum Elokim Yafutsu Oiveh.
No. 1 second.
Let's see.
1 second.
He's gonna look for it.
68 is really long.
Yeah. While he's looking, I have read Job several times, Sherry, and yes, I also love reading about King David.
Yeah, I didn't know what that meant. That comment. People TLC love Job. I love King David. I don't know. It's like the little corner. Is that what that stands for, or is that tender?
This little corner, yeah.
Okay.
But people like calling it this little corner TLC partially because it is tender, loving care.
I could see that applying though. I don't know. I was actually. It's interesting because but we can talk about that later. I was gonna say was talking to Sherry recently how I usually think really hard the other way, and I'm very much pro. You see a lot of Christians that are very against violence, and I'm actually pro violence as being a Christian, and I'm always felt like I'm pushing for it really hard, and I don't know if I just have a bad context for it or something. I still haven't quite figured it
You're
out
just
yet.
a bad
but
person, Jason.
I might make me a bad Christian, but I'm just like I don't understand. It just doesn't compute in my head, really. I'm always I like all that part of the Bible and the book of him coming back with the sword and the lake of fire, all that stuff. I feel like it's definitely necessary as part of the story.
Psalm
But-
145. Tehillah
What? How is he
David,
back?
Mimcha Elohai Hamelech Laracha Shimcha L'Olam Va'ed B'chol Yom Avarcheka Ve'ala Shimcha L'Olam Va'ed Gadol Adonai U'Meholal Me'od Ve'Gdulato Ein Cheker Dor Ledor Yeshabach Ma'asecha U'Gvorotecha Yagidu Hadar Kevod Hodecha V'divrei niflotecha asicha Ve'ezuz anortecha yomeru Uglulatcha asaprena Zecherav tucha yaviu Ve'sitkatcha yeranenu Chanun v'rachum Adonai Erech apayim ugdol chesed Tov Adonai lakol V'rachamav al kol masav Yiduch Adonai kol maasecha v'chasdecha yevarchucha kavod malchutcha yomeru gvuratcha yedaberu lehodia livnei adam gvurotav uchvod hadar malchuto malchutcha malchut kol amim umemshaltecha bechol dor vador somech Adonai lechol hanoflim וזוקף לכל הכפופים אין יכול עליך יסברו ואתה נותן להם את אוכלם בעיתו פותח את ידיך ומשפיע לכל רצון צדיק אדוני בכל דרכיו וחסיד בכל מעשיו קרוב אדוני לכל קרוב לכל אשר יקראו באמת רצון יראיו יעשה ותשובתם ישמע ויושיעם שומר אדוני את כל אוהביו ואת כל הרשעים ישמיד תהילת אדוני ידבר פי ויברך כל אשר שם קודשו לעולם ועד. And that is an acrostic song with one letter missing and one of the few I actually know how to sing.
Nice.
But I thought it's necessary to recognize that in Hebrew you can actually sing these songs.
Well, I could sing them in English. It just wouldn't sound like that.
So Chazi, you were going to tell us what your
Yeah, I
favorite
can't.
song.
I can't find it right now. But basically, it's
Which
talking
one
about.
is it?
I don't remember which one it is, but but David is running away from Saul, and he's talking about how he is drowning, and he mentions how the water is like wheat when it hits the side of the wall, because that's just like a phenomenon that happens when in the desert in Israel, where David was hiding, when there's flash floods, the water fills up all these canyons, and when the water rushes in, the way the water, when the water hits the sides of the canyon, it looks like these streams of wheat. And to me, it was always like very moving how I was imagining in my head, like David is like in one of these nights, he's drowning, he's having a horrible experience while he's trying to hide out. But even throughout that experience, he is still so connected to God that when he comes out, he still manages to articulate and write this beautiful song to God, which, gives an example of even this beautiful poetic version of him drowning while still believing in God. So to me, that was always like very real, sort of like seeing that actually happen today when these canyons flood. That's what you see. So it was very interesting to me, and it was always very moving to me.
Like, you don't actually remember the words?
I can't remember if chita or seorah. I'm really blanking out on this right now. and I wanted to say it's Samechet, but I feel like it's not Samechet though.
Samachet is too late for one of the for
Yeah, right.
David anyway.
Shh, don't say that publicly. He wrote everything.
It says this is the end of the Psalms of David in the
Yeah.
book.
That's like that was like, he's like a synonym. Like, he's not like
It says this. It's in the book, Chezi.
Jacob, this is a nice space. Don't say I'm wrong. Just say we have a different version of the truth. No, yeah, I'm with you.
No, you're just plain
wait.
wrong. It says this is the end.
Are you sure
of the
that's not
Psalms
crayon?
of David?
Yeah, my son was very happy to see that the sons. This is also relates a little to the punishment and redemption. The sons of Korach, exactly. He was very happy to see that they survived.
Psalm 78, Ayin Chet.
I don't know. I was trying to find it too. That's really cool, though. I like your version of that. Oh,
Yosef,
good
you
share.
see that? Exactly. Jacob is very modern. You got him to
Yosef
agree.
thinks I'm modern. Yes, I am very modern. Yes, very, very modern. Rahmana Litzlan.
The Song of Dvorah, that's very old.
Too.
I have to. I'll have to.
What is it? Psalm 136?
Sorry, go ahead, Jason.
I was just gonna say, I think it's no. Well, I do like 136. That was the one I was thinking of, though. What was the one I was thinking of? It's not 139. Oh my gosh, why can't I find it? Oh, 137. That's what I was thinking of. That's sad. I like sad things.
There was one I read today that was only 2 lines. It was really short.
Oh, yeah. What is that? That's like it's in the 40s.
117. Here it is. Hallelu et Hashem kol goyim shabchu kol amimim. Ki gavar aleinu chasto ve'emet Hashem la'olam hallelujah. 117. It's only 2 lines.
Wow.
Nice. Well, so how fast are you trying to read them in a week? Is what your goal is? Or-
No, I'm doing the month thing, but I've been
Okay.
reading 2 days sometimes.
I've never
So,
done it
like-
in a day.
The entirety of Psalms in one day.
I've
Oof.
never done that. That would be tough.
Is the entirety of Psalms in the Tikkun Leil Shavuot, Chezi?
No.
I think it. Okay.
I did read Jeremiah in a day once. That was tough.
I
Always
thought.
fun.
I thought I like Tikkun. I thought there was a Tikkun that had the entirety of it, so I might have done it one time. But like, there's a lot
The
of
last-
Psalms in the Tikkun of Shavuot, isn't there?
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's also in Shavuot you have Akdamot, which I'm convinced that no one in the synagogue knows what they're saying. Everyone's just mumbling the same tune.
Well, I don't say Akdamot. That's an
Right.
Ashkenazi thing.
This week though, not this upcoming week, but last week on the Sabbath we were reading about the sacrificial lamb. We were talking about that a little, and I had a little thought, which Jacob might not like, but
How dare you think when you're reading Torah?
when so there's the two sacrifices. One gets brought into the one gets brought into the temple, and one we sacrifice to Azazel. And there are, I think we spoke about this once also, Jason, but like there's some people that say Azazel is like the name of a mountain, and there's some that say that Azazel was like this evil entity that was like that the natives in that area believed in. And I was thinking how potentially, in a certain way, the Torah is even accepting that entity in a more symbolic way. But the Torah is saying all is from God. And that's why God is giving you this commandment. He himself is telling you to give this to Azazel by accepting and recognizing the fact that there are evil spirits, there is evil in the world, and even that evil comes from God, and hence there's like a sacrifice to it, and it's a very vicious sacrifice. Like he gets thrown off the mountain, and that is like a place for, even in our life, there's always room, and we need to make space for even that level of I don't want to say violence, but that level of well, I guess even that level of violence. But that place happens in the outskirts. It happens all the way out in the desert, and we have to recognize that that kind of behavior is only permitted only when necessary and only in the outskirts, and if it's happening while being recognized by God himself. However, the juxtaposition of that is that the other sacrifice gets brought into the temple inside, so you're bringing that in closer and closer in. So that's like the internal work you're doing, but on the outskirts there is place, and the Torah recognizes there is place to quote unquote deal with these other entities, these other spirits. Just an idea.
This is the type of thing that Father Stephen's constantly saying about the Bible and its relationship with other like traditions of the ancient Near East and the other gods, like how the Bible takes and subverts them and redoes them. And I don't think I think that's all very within Jewish concepts of how to read the Bible.
Great.
Yeah, I like that.
I'm glad we're in agreement.
Finally, Chezi says something that's not absolutely heretical.
Well, I guess
Chezi, you should say Shechianu.
the heretical move over there is just what I'm saying is that the Torah in a certain way is accepting and recognizing this entity instead of saying like, no, there's no such thing, or like, don't waste your time with like nonsense like that. It's finding a place for it.
Okay, so this sounds exactly like what the Vilna Gaon says about Maimonides and his rationalism. Is like this is the thing. It's like you and Yosef are so into the rationalism of Maimonides that you find things which are rejecting his rationalism to be like heretical, and it's like, no, it's not. It's just too Haredi.
Well, Zevi Slavin thinks that Maimonides might have been a mystic, so
Okay, so that was the kind of like, yeah, my interpretation of Maimonides is far less rationalistic than a lot of the rationalists, but like, it doesn't matter to me, because you know what? As great as Maimonides was, he was still just a person.
agreed. He was just a dude with a cool turban on his head.
What you're saying?
Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, no, I was just saying I'm confused at what you guys are talking about with the.
Maimonides?
Yeah.
Jacob's just ripping on Yosef and I.
Right.
It's all
So
good.
Yeah, I'm not quite
Maimonides,
For the
Maimonides
tradition
was.
of-
So one of the things Maimonides famously said, which is controversial in the less rationalistic, more ultra-orthodox things, is Maimonides, like he said, I believe in the Guide for the Perplexed, that like there's no such thing as demons and witchcraft and stuff like that, and that's why the Torah tells us not not to believe in them and stuff because it's all foolishness. And the Vilna Gaon's response to that was like, that was his belief, but like, no, that's not correct. And a lot of what I mean, so Yosef will probably nitpick over me calling this modern orthodoxy, because he will say that modern orthodoxy is more diverse than that. But a lot of Jewish modern orthodoxy really likes that rationalistic aspect of Maimonides in his Guide to the Perplexed, which I think is overly rationalistic. And ultimately, as much as I love Maimonides, I don't accept those teachings of his in the Guide for the Perplexed as negating the idea that no, there actually is such things as witchcraft and demons in the world.
So when you're saying that you're using the word rational, and you're saying he's dismissing those things, he's being over rationalistic by dismissing those things, and that's the way you're using that term.
So,
I'm just
yeah, I mean, ultimately, whether or not Maimonides is as rationalistic as the people who claim to be interpreting Maimonides claim he is also a question. And frankly, I'm scared that Yosef's listening to this and shaking his head and talking thinking how silly I am, and he's
wait, but are you being you would be considered silly because you believe in witchcraft and all those things? Is that kind of the idea? I'm just trying to catch up on what you guys are talking about.
Yosef says, this is my least favorite Ramban. That's Nachmanides. You and Chazi can have this one. I have no idea which Ramban he's talking about.
I would first of all, just the Guide of the Perplexed in general, and I mentioned this I think here before, that ultimately Maimonides finishes this with doubt, right? We are standing on a place of doubt, and that you're supposed to be able to embrace the uncertainty. And that's more on the theological level he's talking about, but you could use that even the ideas of, let's say, witchcraft. And there's an uncertainty always, and you can't be 100% certain, and you have to be able to live in that uncertainty and in that tension. That's number one. He doesn't come out saying he knows exactly what everything is. Number two, we are told that or we learn that Solomon was the wisest of all men, and he spoke to animals, right? He understood the language of the animals, but the interpretation of that isn't that he actually spoke to a bird or to a dolphin. Rather, he was very in tune to the behavioral aspects of animals and how they relate to nature, and he was very connected to that, which would seem to some as if he's talking to the animal, or he's a horse whisperer, but it's someone that is just very in tune with the animal in that way. So I think even taking a term like speaking to animals or witchcraft, then the question is what seems witchcraft to some then could seem like science or street smarts or knowledge today. And people didn't read, people didn't write, people were not aware of what was happening in the next town. So someone that comes from a very worldly place and is aware of, for all intents and purposes, using ayahuasca, for example, you could be sure someone's yeah, this person was a witch because I went to Neverland after drinking that drink. So that's one version of looking at it from a more scientific view of how these things mean, witchcraft. However, you could also come and say, we have the story of Bilam, that there are, and we have the East, and they have different traditions and different yogas and different meditative mechanisms which allow people to reach nirvana or different states of mind, which you could then say these are inklings of prophecy, and that would be happening naturally as well. So I think there's room for everything.
I have no problem with there actually being magic in the world and like people doing miracles.
I love there's magic in the world and there's witchcraft. I love it all. I think it's great. I'm glad it's there.
Well, I mean,
Because, God,
the question is, how much are you, let's say, relying on that for your faith? So
I don't
Um,
engage with it. I think because I believe in it, it kind of I'm way more hesitant to like. That's even when people ask me about psychedelics. No, I haven't tried psychedelics because I actually believe in fairies. Like that's why I haven't. Like I'm not really. That's why I'm kind of cautious about it because I don't really want to go diving into something I already know is there. So, but
Now, I had a whole theology, like what's called a cessationist theology, to explain why these things no longer happen, and that's completely changed in my life over the past like 2 years.
Andrew believes in magic. He says,
Because
"Go to the Latin Mass." I'm just kidding.
I'm wondering what Yosef's thinking.
well, I know he's not liking.
Does he not believe
I
in
know. No, I'm assuming like the thing I said about Azazel, though. I don't think he'd be.
Oh,
Yeah,
so
okay.
apparently
So
he
there's that.
says Nachmanides says the same thing, which doesn't surprise me. And frankly, I tend to go with Nachmanides a lot more than Maimonides.
magic? Well,
Oh,
sorry, Cindy, you were say something. I didn't.
well, I was gonna ask Jacob why the last 2 years what shifted.
I've seen demons.
Okay.
Like I've seen things which I can only attribute to demons.
Yeah.
Oh man, tell me about it. Let's hear it. Were
No,
they
you
to
don't wanna
bed?
hear it.
I have several streams about what's going on with the Mormons.
I remember you saying something about that in the Mormon.
Yep.
thing.
Yeah. Yep.
I'm looking at this Nachmanides right now. I forgot about this. Yeah, well, it's pretty long actually. Right, he
well,
goes and talks about
Nachmanides
the
often
demons.
is.
Right. He goes and talks about the demons over here. Right. So this, I mean, this relates a little to the conversation people have around here about like the divine council and the introduction of Satan in the story of Job.
There is a reason why Maimonides gets quoted by the modern Orthodox and Nachmanides doesn't. Because, like, Nachmanides is, like, yeah, he's much more Haredi, and he says a lot of things that, like, the modern Orthodox simply don't like, even though he came after Maimonides.
It's okay. Everyone loves Nachmanides.
Everyone loves Nachmanides. I'm not sure
Yeah.
everyone loves
Nah.
Nachmanides. I mean,
People are
I
fans.
certainly love the fact that he actually had a synagogue in Jerusalem, and his disputation was great reading that I think every Christian should do. Yosef says that's not true. We quote him plenty. How do you think I know he said this? I read his entire Perushim on Torah. He read.
There you go.
So Yosef is like this Talmud Chacham.
Oh,
that,
totally.
like, he's been through the entirety, I believe, of both Talmuds already, even though he won't admit it.
He did a video today, right? I haven't watched this video yet, though. I'm pretty sure.
I did, yeah.
Oh, I haven't seen it. For some reason, I don't get notification of his.
That's funny, Sherry. So Nachmanides, like, he came after Maimonides. So yeah, it is. Yeah, Nach in Yiddish also means after. But yeah, Rabbeinu Moshe ben Nachman. Nachman. No, Nachman was his father's name, and Nachman is a common name in Hebrew. It means it's related to Nechama. Same.
How come y'all don't have like intercessory prayers? Like now that we're on the topic of the divine council and whatnot.
Who says we don't have intercessory prayers?
And then, okay, yeah.
It's a Job, right? Wasn't Job that whole idea of
I
Job?
don't-
Open
I don't
up
think
a
it's the Bible.
Jewish
No, I don't
Jewish book of like every single Jewish prayer starts with fathers, and our Father who art in heaven. Like no, that's actually Christians misunderstanding it. it's God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's how every single one of our prayers starts.
Now that's interesting. So you count that as intercessory prayer?
Yeah. Like when you say God of my fathers, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, yeah.
Just in the context of my earlier conversation, we were talking about naming things. I was going to ask you about that in Judaism, in the sense of when is naming something standing against it, and when is naming something, like in terms of when you're dealing with things like that. You know,
Well,
calling something is.
anytime you name something, you mark it and you diminish it and you confine it. And that's why, for example, we ultimately don't say God's name. Why God is in fact ineffable and he must be. But at the same time, we pray for the day when he will be one and his name will be one, because in that day, God's infinitude will be revealed in his finitude.
Like, man, we believe in that, huh?
I'm looking.
So Yosef says, I don't think they are misunderstanding. It's closer to Avinu Malkeinu, and I think
What is that?
it's no, like Avot is not closer to Avinu Malkeinu. Oh,
Avinu
you okay? So I have a weird idea about our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, which is I believe that in fact Jesus was giving a mnemonic formula for how to pray the Amidah, which is the Jewish prayer, which has section names, and the name of the first one is Avot, meaning fathers, and the name of the second one could be Shemaim or Geshamim, and so that could be who art in heaven, and the name of the third one is Kedushat Shamo, which is sanctification of his name. And so I think Jesus was actually giving a mnemonic for the Amidah, and Christians, not understanding what he's saying, took that mnemonic and turned it into an actual prayer. But that's my weird idea that I don't know anybody agrees with.
I mean, y'all are the ones talking about like naming things diminishes them and puts them in like a summary, I guess, you know? Why can't a summary be a prayer, you know?
A summary can. I mean, look, I am very glad that Christianity has been able to take little bits of Judaism and bring it all around the world so that even Christians can see through the glass darkly.
I was cut off for a second, but I was gonna say, Jacob, that we all learn Ramban all the time in school, and so much so that I guess I must have listened to this, heard this Ramban before, and then was thinking about it, and it's so immersed in me that I thought it was, this little idea, but really it was a Ramban.
And instead of thinking Baruch Shekivanti, you thought, this must be heresy.
I was just saying that in the context of speaking to Jacob right now. That's it. I didn't think it's gonna be heresy.
It's interesting. So, but Azazel or Azazel, I don't know how you say it, but I don't even know what that is. If I remember right, isn't that the one that teaches? I don't think he teaches the metalworking. I can't remember what he does.
No,
in the
that's
Book of
the
Enoch.
one-
I know he's in the Book of Enoch.
Oh, in the Book of Enoch, I don't know. But here, I'll teach you how to curse. So when you go to Israel, if you want to tell somebody to go to hell, you say Lech la'Azazel, which means go to hell.
So it means. So wait. So Azazel is closely
That's
related to the word
that's
hell?
where the scapegoat is sent. So the scapegoat is sent to Azazel. So that's
he is-
why the scapegoat. So there's two goats on Yom Kippur.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
One is
Yeah.
to God, and one is for Azazel.
Uh-huh.
Well,
And-
Azazel is like he's a demon that has a brother, Shamchazi or Shachzai. It's another angel. I think it's the Yalkut Shimoni that talks about how like it's like a fallen angel. But then there's the version that looks at it like what is the name of Azazel in Arabic? It has like the name of the mountain. Azazel Hab. Jabal Muntar. That's what it's called.
So Azazel is the one you put the sin on and then send it off into
Yes.
the wilderness. Yep, okay. Yeah, which is like, is that kind of like the Cain and Abel thing? That's kind of what I've.
Well, it relates to
Whoops.
Chezi got a phone call.
Oh no! Right when he's gonna break it down for me. Well, like Cain being sent out into the wilderness, like one goes
Here he's back.
like this.
it relates to the Nephilim because Azazel apparently would like sleep with different creatures and different animals and hybrids, and that also related to the Nephilim. That sounds a little like there's a midrash that said that Adam slept with all the animals before Eve. Then you have to throw Lilith inside over there as well. So it gets complicated.
Yeah, that is pretty complicated.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to categorize it because to me, I was talking to Mitch the other day because I actually sent him a podcast about Satanism. Because I was telling him, like, I'd actually like to speak to a Satanist personally because I always hear secondhand or like
Mm-hmm.
third hand. of
Why would
Satan.
you do that?
Why?
Because I want to actually talk to them and hear from someone's mouth actually what it is they believe, rather than like, oh, this is what Satanists believe. But because I've always heard,
I can
Okay.
give you a podcast to listen to from a friend, but why?
well, because I don't have to. I guess is what I'm saying is I listened to a podcast. I already did that, and they said
Did you?
basically they were just kind of saying the same thing. So from what I gather, what I keep hearing over and over is it's just worship of self.
Is
Is
which?
what Satanism is. Satanism is worship of self, right?
Okay. I am going to say goodnight because I should get to bed.
All right. Good
Jason
night.
Jason is here. Chezi is here. They're both admins. Good night, people.
All right.
Night,
Good night,
Jacob.
Jacob.
Good night, Jacob.
Well, I guess what I was trying to get at is I don't equate Azazel with Satan.
No,
I see Azazel
neither
as
just
the result of Satan.
neither does Judaism. They don't see it as Satan. They see it as like some other. Well, again, either like a demon or an entity, a fault. There's versions of see it as a fallen angel. I think it's not part of our canon, but it's a book that talks about Abraham, and it has a conversation where Abraham and the hawk that comes in the covenant he does with God when he puts in the food. So that hawk is supposed to be Azazel, and then that they have a conversation, and then God gets mad at the hawk for having the conversation with Abraham, and that's all I remember. And they mention it in the Book of Enoch, but I can't tell you off the top of my head what the conversation there is.
That's interesting. Yeah, I think we mentioned this in the Book of Enoch before. We talked about it. There's a certain word in there where I think we've mentioned it. I guess what I was saying though is I feel like, so if I'm categorizing, or if I'm supposed to understand Azazel as something like this scapegoat, to me that seems the result of Satanism. Like it seems like that is the result of me worshiping myself. Then I need
Again, what does that feel like to you?
It's the result of me worshiping myself. Then I need Azazel. I need a scapegoat. Like I have to point the finger at somebody if I want to exalt self. So to me, I don't equate Azazel. Like it's hard for me to equate the scapegoat with Satan. It seems like Satan is the act of scapegoating or something like that, if that makes sense, or pointing the finger. Because if I'm worshiping myself, then I have to constantly lift myself above the other people, and that's constantly having to point the finger and find the blame on someone else so I can make myself higher.
Well, I would say that would be in the example we gave, that one needs to recognize that he is to blame in a certain extent, right? It's in him. And hence we have the sacrifice, which we recognize that this is us, ultimately speaking. We're not going to kill ourselves right now, but we're going to try to. We know that on the outskirts, in the desert, all the way out there, like that's where the shadow's hiding. That's where this person of us that is, where this evil manifests in us. However, the redemptive work is to, like the high priest does, is go into the temple, into the Holy of Holies, is to make that act and do the internal work that is necessary to redeem yourself. So it's not washing your hand clean of like, we got rid of this and we're done. You have to imagine this was like a very dramatic scene, when the high priest would decide, which one is to Azazel and which one is to God. And they would all be aware of the high priest going out and throwing it out. So everyone was very tense, and this was a very embodied experience. And they really did feel like this is, when you have this like collective consciousness working together, and you guys could all see that the outskirts really represents the outskirts in our soul, then I think that is very powerful. And it's less about like, I'm pointing at something else because I don't want to take the blame. It's recognizing the blame and recognizing how we need to do better. I think in today's world, doing that would sound like sort of crazy, for us to all feel.
Right. Yeah. I think but I wasn't trying to say that's what that ritual is doing, that it's a worship of self. Like that's not, I guess that wasn't my intention. I wasn't trying to say that. I guess I was just saying that the point I was trying to make, I don't necessarily think Azazel is the same thing as Satan, or is even necessarily connected with Satanism. Like to me, that the whole Yom Kippur ritual is recognizing what you're talking about, and it almost seems to me to be somewhat similar to the Cain and Abel story, like almost a representation of that, but I could be wrong.
What do you mean? Sorry, go ahead. I either Jason or Sydney, go ahead.
Oh, I was just thinking, the one is, like you said, the one is brought to God and offered up to God, which would be Abel. And then the other one is kind of sent into the wilderness or cast out. But if the reason, I don't know, there seems to be something, like you're talking about, something internal or some sort of not recognizing the image of God in man is what causes that too, or something like that. I'm not even quite sure how to put my finger on it yet. I don't know, but
I'm thinking. Sandy?
Go ahead, Sandy.
Well, I was going to ask you, what prompted your interest in Satanism as opposed to the other stuff we're talking about? And what has it perplexed in connection with what you were just asking, Hizzy?
what prompted my interest? Are you asking me in Satanism? I don't have an interest in performing, like in getting involved in it or anything. I guess
She's
my interest
asking why do you believe in the devil?
because
Or why you believe, or why you're curious about Satanism. Yes.
oh, I'm not curious. Okay, so I'm not necessarily curious to get involved in it. I was just curious to figure out exactly what it is they believe because I don't see there. Okay, so there's a person that I don't even know him closely at all. He's like a friend of a friend. I heard he was like actually a Satanist and actually one of the head leaders of a church at a Satanist cult. And if I remember right, I think he has children. And I'm like, if you actually, if from my understanding, if you're a Satanist, you worship yourself. So I don't understand how you can have children. You would have to eat your children. Like that's the result of worship yourself. You end up devouring everything else but yourself. Like that's just the end result of it. And maybe my mind always like just tries to jump and follow to the end. And so that's why I'm curious because I'm like, I don't understand how you can what it is exactly they believe, but there seems to be something alluring to it in that it's self-empowering. And so you can kind of go that route with it. And there seems to be something about it too, where you can find your self-identity. So I think there is almost some importance to it that way in that you can develop an individual identity in it. But I guess what prompted my curiosity was just to actually understand what it is they actually believe. I'm not actually curious of getting involved in it. I just didn't know what that was. Because I've often thought that as well, even in Christianity and things like that, is I'm like, if I want to know who Satan is, all I have to do is look in the mirror. So I'm like, I mean, I don't know if that's accurate to say, but that's just how I say it to myself, because it would be something like in I think it's 2 Thessalonians. It's when the Antichrist comes, he sits on the throne of God, declaring himself God. So if I were to just look in the mirror and say, yeah, God, I'm God of my own life, God of my own world, I worship me. To me, that's Satanism. But I need to confirm that though. I guess that's why I was curious about it.
I can't really. I'm looking through my friend's email that I get.
Oh, okay.
You're a Satanist friend
Yeah,
that sends you emails? I see. I got you.
yeah. Pastor's son that I knew when he in there years back.
Yeah.
You don't really have any of that in Judaism so much. There's no like Satanist cult. Not that I'm aware of, at least.
Well, they're not necessarily Christianity either. They're just around,
I understand, but like I just said, like that's not really prevalent. That's not really prevalent in Israel. Where you have but I would just say, as far as like having a kid, and you're thinking like, why would you have a kid that's not like selfless? If you're a Satanist, I mean, there's people had kids.
Right.
For most of humanity, just like that was like an insurance policy. Who's going to work? Who's going to take care of me? Like, so, there plenty of people have kids for selfish reasons, or these are. Yeah.
Aren't you your kid at that point? Then, I mean, at least symbolically, I guess, or metaphorically.
Yeah. I mean, yes, correct. You're using it's a means to an end to push forward your agenda. Maybe it's part of your minions. So, I would hope that some of these Satanists that would have kids would then, during that miraculous act, realize, and when they held their kid for the first time, realize, like, wow, like this is so much bigger than me. And then potentially that helps them get out of the gravitational pull of their cult.
Don't know. He's got a very a lot of issues around his past and stuff with Christianity, but still values ritual, which is one of the reasons for.
Hey, Sherry.
So when I glance down, sort of the one that comes up, it's kind of like talking about indulgence instead of abstinence and hedonism, and a whole bunch of conflicts, and then talking about more integration. So it sounds like the opposite of what is being described with the goats. Because they're very distinctly separated for different purposes. Whereas when I'm reading him or talking to him, I'm thinking, well, I wonder what they do with goats, because it sounds like there'd be this merging of the two aspects, and to me that's bizarre.
Sherry,
Yeah,
hit us.
I just wanted to say to Jason,
Can't make the
why do you think talking to a Satanist is going to give you any idea what a Satanist believes? I mean, you know, like you're talking to Kezi to find out what Judaism is about. It's totally different than Jacob, and sometimes they differ between Joseph, and then Andrew might have a different version of Christianity than Sandy, right? And PBK and me. And like, come on. I just had to say
That's
that.
very true.
I just had
No,
to
that's
say
very
that.
true. That's a good point.
Like
Yeah.
you can get an overview.
We do
but
not
you
live.
still get one
You know,
perspective.
this idea of experts. It's a joke. Okay.
Uh-huh.
We don't live in a
What?
world
Yeah.
of experts. We live in a world of human beings.
You didn't jump on here because you're an expert, Sherry?
No.
Shoot.
Well, I think some of the reason too. So here's I totally agree that would only give me just one person's, I guess, viewpoint on Satanism if I did actually talk to one. And I'm not like dead set on it. It's just like, before I talked to Jacob or Hezi or Yosef, I didn't know what Judaism was. Like, I was brought up in Christianity, was a totally different picture of it. Totally different. Same thing with Islam. Like, I've only spoken to a few people that are Muslims now. Like, and it was very brief, and it seems to be just like, it's totally different than what I've been told my whole life. Because you usually only get like the extremist stories or something like that. And so until I actually get in conversations with real people like you're talking about, it's just I feel like I'm getting a broad picture. So even with Satanism, it's like until I actually talk to an actual person, I feel like there's a part of it where I'm only just getting,
Well, you know,
like,
this is how I feel. This is how I feel about Satan. According to the Book of Job,
We're back to Job.
he believes that there is no one righteous, no, not one. Right? That's what he says to Eliphaz in a dream. He's like, or a spirit. Okay, so it doesn't say Satan, but it says a spirit, which confirms Eliphaz's own convictions about humanity. And I get the sense that Satan actually has very little respect for human beings. And so, I think Satanists are fooling themselves to think that he actually values their worship.
I see what Sherry's saying. I would mention that the word Satan in Hebrew, Satan, comes from Satah, like you were on the straight and narrow path and you ventured off, basically. Okay, so the idea is that you are being moved astray, right? Pushed astray, and I mean, David mentions the word Satan, but he's talking about sort of like he's talking to a human in that context. Solomon in Song of Songs has his, which is in Judaism. Some people say this after they read the Shema before they go to sleep. They also read the song that Solomon would sing about, like around his bed, he would have guards wrapping around his bed at night because he'd be scared. And he has angels wrapping around him as well. And these are to protect him from his fear of night. And that it alludes to the Satan, but that alludes to when you are sleeping, dreamland comes in, you could be taken off your path, you don't know where you are, and that would be like you're in a Satan state, so to speak. And that also relates to the book of Job, when Satan comes and with the Bnei Elohim, first of all, he comes from the aim. He comes from the nothingness, and he mentions to God that you created, I think he says chasita, but you've created a bunker for Job. So he doesn't even feel the real world. He can't feel the nothingness yet. And only when he feels the nothingness will you be able to really test him. So let me introduce him to some nothingness, remove these protective shields his life has created himself, and let's see how he handles himself. But I would look as Satan really as again, is the nothingness, is what leads you astray. That could even be psychologically, and that's everyone has their own internal Satan that they have to contend with.
Yeah, and Kezi, isn't also the angel of the Lord in the story of Balaam's donkey? Isn't that word a Sataning? Like it stands as an adversary, right?
Yes.
I think so.
Yes, I believe so too. But 1 second,
Satan,
that I actually want to check.
The angel of the Lord stands as a Satan in the way.
Yeah, correct. We are correct. We are correct. And I mean, that's why it's always like people talk about the snake was Satan, right? This is something that's telling you to venture out again off the straight and narrow path. This relates to also a teaching of Rabbi Nachman, which says the whole world is a very thin bridge, and the point is not to have fear. And it's to realize that we're always. Sorry, go ahead, Sherry.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to ask you, what does Maimonides say about Satan in Job? Because you mentioned that earlier. I was just curious.
Maimonides also doesn't see Satan as an angel. He sees. I mean, Maimonides says that he mentioned that Eliphaz. I mentioned in the past that the Maimonides specifically says that Eliphaz theologically was correct with his response to Job, but that wasn't the right place to talk about it. As far as what he thinks about.
Oh, drat.
Oh, no. Did he get a phone call?
I don't know, but he often drops out just at that point where I feel like somebody should say, to be continued.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here, Andrew. Got some thoughts?
Still walking there in the dark, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm
Watch out for
walking.
Satan.
Yeah. I think another thing to note is you can't always incorporate a ton of traditions, like you can go talk to Jewish people like we're doing here, and then talk to Christians and then Satanists and whatnot, and you're never going to be able to parse through everything, right? I don't know. Even when I'm talking to Jacob and Hezi, I realize that some stuff they're gonna say and I'm just not gonna get, right? And if I try pursuing that stuff, it might even do some harm to me, right? If I were to pursue Kabbalah or whatever, or even the Talmud, right? It's too much for me, I wouldn't be able to integrate it with my Christianity, and it'd require me to restructure my whole life. So
Yeah.
Just be careful how much you integrate.
Yeah. Well, that was. Yeah, well, yeah, I wouldn't eat it. I guess that's what my point was. I'm not trying to integrate it and get involved in the practice. It was just more. It's just, I wouldn't be against talking to one, but I think it's kind of similar to where, Fraudwith down here said, most Satanists are edgy atheists, and that's to my understanding, that's what it is they don't even worship Satan. You can't actually, because you're worshiping yourself. So Satan is yourself. That is the idea. It's not an entity. It's not some angel. It's not.
Well, that was the other
stuff.
question That was the other question I wanted to ask Hezi. This character Azazel, is this the way you were describing it? it seemed to me, I put it in the comments, but nobody saw it.
It's the false self.
It's like a false self of sorts.
Yeah, and this also relates to the imaginary in a certain perspective, and you might be able to share more about that, given your recent videos about that. But I didn't answer you about. I got cut off about Maimonides. So Maimonides doesn't believe in Satan as like a he calls Satan the deceiver, right? And it's
Yeah.
also same idea as like taking you off the path. And he says Satan is also the angel of death, and it's also the evil inclination. It's all the same thing. It's
Right.
not like some mystical entity. And he explains that this is like in Judaism we have that the man's heart is evil from his menurav when he's young, and the good inclination only develops as you get a little older, as you collect a little more wisdom. But inside you, you always have this evil inclination that is what you're trying to control, and that is what Satan is. And this relates to Bilam, which is he really saw himself. He was stopping himself, basically. There was no angel over there necessarily speaking, but rather he was seeing all the evil inside, and that was devastating for him. And this also relates to the imagination. There's things we know, and there's sometimes things we imagine, and our imagination could take us astray sometimes, and that could be very dangerous if that is not if it is not contained, or even the imagination is within some sort of context.
Okay, I have to think about that. I don't know if I agree with him about that not being an angel. Like,
Is that implying
that kind of bums me out a little bit.
Just to stress, Maimonides is Mr. Rationalist. So his attitude is if you're not using logic, then you are going to be opened to these different spirits, ideas that can many times be accessed through imagination. Right. So if you allow yourself to start thinking like, this is what my rational mind says, but let me start thinking like this, then you might get lost. But that was Maimonides. It's not everyone.
So he's not advocating rationalism versus, obviously spirits are all made up. He's actually advocating paying attention to how you handle your thinking.
Well, I would say that he was right, but he wasn't entirely right. It's the conversation I had with Jess recently. We talked about Blake. Blake makes the book of Job a psychological journey, that it's all happening in Job's head, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember when I first came across Blake's ideas, I thought, that's kind of, I don't know, it's a little too reductionist, it's not three-dimensional enough for me. And then I thought, well, actually, wait, it is all happening in his head, right? It's also all happening in his head. So this is the interesting thing, and it's really difficult to, this is why I said everything all at once earlier, Jason, because when you're talking about spiritual things, you're talking about a dimension that has no time and space, right? So the past, the present, and the future are happening all at once. And yeah, don't ask me to, I've never been there. So
yeah.
I just know that's how it works, right? And that we experience eternity in the present moment, like now. That's where we experience it.
It could be the echoes coming from me. I'm sorry. Is that better?
Yeah.
So when I mentioned in Job that the Satan comes from the nothingness, from the Ein, when it says Aleph Yud Nun, it also means like it could be interpreted as Ein Sof, as like which is
Yes.
like a Kabbalistic
That's what I
term. But the reason when God retracts himself, that is where the quote unquote the devil finds himself, in the nothingness, in where that retraction to build the world and create this whole universe we have. That is where that empty space, that retraction, is where there's room for the devil, the Satan, to appear. And that is true with ourselves. In our mind, we also have our own there's a retraction, there's an emptiness which could get filled. And that's why Maimonides works very hard on mindfulness, why he loves Aristotle, while he has to make sure that, like, prophecy is if you are doing all the proper mindfulness work to know and be aligned properly and mentally, so you could perceive God properly. Because in the aim, in the place where there's a retraction, where there's nothing, that is where the imagination could cause you to be led astray. And that's why he's very careful about that. But it happens within us. So the interactions we're having.
That's interesting, because George MacDonald says that if the imagination can't go out to worship, there's an echo again for some reason. If the imagination can't go out to worship, it will stay home to be sensual. And that's essentially the same thing that Maimonides is getting at, I think. Right? Because the imagination won't be, you can't stop it from working itself out. Like, it will have its way, right? So, and that's why George MacDonald says you have to culture it, which is what Maimonides is saying too. You have to culture the imagination. You have to work to make, like MacDonald actually says that if your children are being silly, you should make them feel ashamed and teach them to stay away from that world of fancy and rather seek to find out the works of God, right? That's the duty of the imagination. And that's exactly what Maimonides is saying. It's the same thing. It's the exact same thing.
It again, with the story of Bilam, and I'm going to use the story of Bilam and the story of Jacob fighting the angel. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, assuming this is in our mind, right? So it's easier for me to say this with, first of all, with Jacob. When Jacob goes back for these, it says like these pachim ktanim, which are these like little vessels. And my interpretation of that, and later on, I mean, there's also sages that say it was a dream, but these are little pockets of guilt. Why is he leaving his whole family the night before he's supposed to meet Esau? Why is he walking out to get like some vessels? His kids should have been like, Dad, like, forget the shoe you left. You know what I mean? Like, it's okay. We don't have to go back to get the shoe. But he goes back there because he has his own struggles. I ran away from my dad's house and I lied to him. I tricked my brother, like, because my mom told me to. Like, who knows what I'm even doing over here right now? And there has to be, then there's this conversation, this rev up conversation that he's having in front of the mirror, so to speak. Who are you? Who am I? Change my name. It's an angel, but he's not beating him. But if it was an angel, why is he not beating him? Because this is an internal struggle that's happening. And even the fact that he ends up limping. You have writers that have writing block, or like they have carpal tunnel, suddenly their hand stops working. Like, this could be the imagination can easily lead to physical results. So he has to walk out from here, and he has to tell himself that he is no longer this person, Jacob, but he is now this person, Israel. And he has to really accept that about himself. Now, it's so real where even Bilam, even though he knows, he tells Balak, he says, like, you're sending me on a mission, but you have to realize anything I'm going to say ultimately comes from God. But now when he starts walking, and he's known as Shtum Ha'ayin, I don't know what the translation is in Hebrew, in English for that is, but he has, I don't know if it says he's blind in one eye, but the idea is that he can't see it clearly through his imagination that, the person, the angel in front of him is really himself. This is an internal battle that he's going through, because he already said earlier that he's not going to be able to curse the Israelites. However, he's still attempting to do so. And this is where he has like this inner conflict where he's like, you literally cannot move forward. The donkey goes to the right and squeezes his leg on the wall because he himself is telling himself, like, you have to stop. Like, this this mission that you're on, that you think you understand what's going on, you're misleading this. You're being led astray, and ultimately he has to accept that. At the end of the day, he does accept it. It does accept that. So I think, again, here you could see where it is something that's happening internally, but these are different levels of interpretation. So I'm not negating the fact that maybe this is an entity, or maybe we could look at this as, if we all accept this as an entity, then like consciously this becomes an entity. But there's definitely an interpretation where this is all done internally.
Well, that's why I said, I mean, it it is happening in Job's psychology, right? Like, this is what metanoia is. Repentance is, it's a psychological thing that happens to you. Like, your mind has to be renewed before your body will follow.
Speaking of that, I have got to say goodnight because I can feel mine shutting down. It's 1:45 in the morning here. So
Good night, Sandy. It was great to see you again.
Good night, Sandy.
Yeah, good
I
night.
also got to get to work, but this is always fun. Sherry, thank you for joining as always. Andrew, I'm guessing you got your studying done if you're back here. So good on you. Bye, guys.
Bye, Hetty.
See you. Yeah, I should go too, unfortunately. It's my bedtime.
Okay. All right. I'll probably
Yeah.
just end it too then. It's
What's
1:45 here. I said I'll probably just end it as well then, because it's 1:45 also. So, but it's been fun as usual. Yeah, I do want to dig into this topic more though, because I want to. I don't know. I need to. I could probably talk to you about it more, like
Yeah.
off
Did you
videos
watch
too.
the
But I just.
conversation? Did you watch
Was
the
it today?
conversation I had with Jess?
Was it today? You posted?
No, it was a couple days last week. It's on Jess's channel, and it's a retros.
Oh, I have.
It's a what did he call it? I can't remember. Anyway, it's the newest one.
Oh, I haven't seen it. If it's on his, I watched the one on Grail Country where you were in with Nate and some other people. Where's Jess's channel? I
Jess
gotta clean up my
Perlotta?
channel so I follow. Yeah, I'll check it out though. I'll definitely check it out. I didn't know it was a few days ago.
Yeah, it's a good one.
All right. All right. Well, I'm gonna head off. You guys too. I'll talk to you later. Good night,
Sorry,
Andrew.
I hope you don't think that we're leaving because you joined.
Yeah. Sorry. Sorry.
That's definitely not the case.
Yeah.
See you
All right.
guys.
Well, I'll talk to y'all soon. See you guys.
Bye.
Good night.
Have a good one.